the area can truly thrive. Now, as a mum, I'm proud to be a mum. It's the best role in the world. I want to create a brilliant future for our children and also ensuring that the best supports are there for the elderly in our county. To the people of Greater Lincolnshire, in me you have someone who will fight for you. I always do what is right and I always take the common sense approach. We stand today, the British people feel betrayed. Our culture, our values and our communities are under siege. Streets that should be safe havens are rife with crime. Young people cannot afford to rent, let alone buy a house. And migration is out of control. But amidst this chaos, there is hope. And that hope is reform. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to the Q&A portion of this press conference. We'll start with broadcast journalists over here, and then we'll have a separate huddle with the three of us with print journalists, if that's okay. Let's start with, yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Alex Forsyth, BBC News. You've talked about wanting to be a party of government by 2029. How many councillors do you need to get elected in the May county elections to be on that trajectory and at the Senedd elections in 26? Can you put a number on what success looks like? And Andrea Jenkyns, if I may, how long have you been thinking about joining Reform UK, given you had a picture of Nigel Farage on one of your election leaflets when you were a Conservative candidate? Shall I go first?
Go on.
I always like to push the boundaries and be a bit cheeky. Look, I've always respected Nigel, and gosh, as we've, I mean, what is it, 6 years, Richard, that we first worked together during Brexit? We are politically aligned, and how long have I been thinking about it? Well, I mean, I was tempted before the general election, but I am a loyal person to a party. I might not be loyal to prime ministers, as we've seen in the past, but I'm loyal to parties, and I believed, as I said, in going down with that ship fighting. I was elected as a Conservative, and I got knocked out as a Conservative. But I feel, unfortunately, the party's become tired. I've got amazing friends in the party, you know, Boris Pritty, Robert Jenrick, and there's some decent people there, but I feel the party's lost its way, very sadly. And reform actually is more closely aligned, and I think it's actually my natural home.
Yeah, I mean, the truth of it is that half the Conservative Party in Parliament should join Reform and the other half should join the Lib Dems. I mean, they are hopelessly split on everything. You can see the internal bickering and infighting hasn't changed one little bit. So, you know, they are literally, the brand is broken, the product doesn't resonate with the general public, and what we're going to do, we're going to replace the Conservatives as the opposition force to Labour as the next general election comes along. And I'm not just sitting here saying that. I haven't come out of semi-retirement for fun. I didn't need to do this. I'm doing it because I genuinely think that once every 50, 100 years, there comes along, whatever the political system, and yes, of course, we've got first past the post, but once every 50, 100 years, there comes along that moment where sort of epochal political change can happen, and I think we're at that moment right now. To answer your question, I'm following the Paddy Ashdown model. You know, Paddy Ashdown was that dynamic leader of the Lib Dems who understood, until you'd won a significant number of district council seats and county council seats, you weren't even in the race to win parliamentary election seats or by-election seats. That was the model that Ashdown built for the Lib Dems through the 1990s that finally got them into a coalition government in 2010. That is very much the model that we're following. You mentioned the Senedd elections. I think our prospects there are remarkably good. We've got some very high-caliber people coming on board in Wales, which we'll let you know about over the course of the next few months. And Scotland. I mean, Scotland, where UKIP really didn't trouble the scorer. You know, we managed to get one MEP under the D'Hondt system in the European elections and one for the Brexit Party too in 2019. But beyond that, we never really challenged to win seats at Holyrood. But you'll see, I mean, last Thursday, there were 3 council by-elections in Glasgow. Glasgow, our second weakest part of Scotland, in a general election. And there we were polling, 13%, 12.5%, 18% in those local council by-elections. And I think that one of the things that will change radically over the course of the next few years is the scales are beginning to fall from the eyes of businesses and of the public, that we are living through an industrial massacre, Luton this week just being the latest example, this religious obsession with chasing net zero targets is giving consumers the most expensive electricity prices in Europe. It's giving our industries the most expensive electricity prices in the world. And Miliband's mad plans, which only really follow on from Theresa May and Boris Johnson, remarkable yesterday at the dispatch box, there was Kemi Badenoch saying, well, you've closed Luton because of your EV targets, to which the Prime Minister could very easily respond, well, actually, they were your targets. It was you that put them in place whilst you were in government. And there is going to be a radical rethink about what we're doing in the name of net zero. And so I'm pretty optimistic we can do well in Scotland too. So the answer to your question is lots. Yes, we have to win a lot of council seats next year. We have to win. And yes, it's going to have to be in the hundreds to be credible. Is that an easy thing to achieve? No. Are we going to do it? Watch this space.
Yeah, please.
Hi. Thank you, Beth Rigby from Sky News. Nigel Farage, you just spoke about the net migration figures, 900,000 in the year to June 2023, 728,000 in the year to June 2024, all under Conservative governments, which gave you a very potent message in the general election of people who voted for Brexit and then felt dreadfully let down. But you just said there that Labour are even worse. You have nothing to base that on. They haven't yet got a record on migration, and Keir Starmer says he has a plan to drive down migration and has made that commitment. Are you saying that because actually you need Labour to fail on migration in order to try and feather your own nest and improve your chances at the next general election? And to Andrea, it must have been quite a difficult decision to defect from the Conservative Party to Reform. Do you worry about what colleagues might think? Do you think there might be a world in which the two parties might merge and become a party to the centre-right? Or would you like to now kill off your former colleagues? Thank you. OK. In answer to your question, the Labour government are failing spectacularly on a number of fronts. Just 4 months into government, a precipitous fall in the confidence ratings in Keir Starmer as leader in Labour's polls, and we see that every Thursday with these local by-elections that I was talking about a moment ago. Ed Miliband's promise that they would reduce electricity bills are wrong, and I can tell you that because I've seen the strike prices. 171 successful wind energy auctions, both offshore and onshore, all struck at double the current market price. I'm coming to your question. So on energy bills, they are failing. On migration, what I can tell you is the incoming Labour government said there would be fewer cross-channel migrants going into hotels. We learned this morning that number has increased by 6,000 just since Labour came to power. But let's really get to it. What about returns? There was a boast the other week from the Prime Minister that aeroplanes were taking illegal immigrants back to where they came from. We've got the numbers this morning. There is a fall in the numbers that have been deported from Q2 to Q3, when in most years, because of the weather, that quarter-on-quarter move shows that actually the number has gone up. Smashing the gangs, I've been hearing this about drugs in this country ever since I could barely walk. It's failed on that, and it will fail on stopping cross-channel migration. And on the broader question of who can come into the country and settle, they seem to be wholly unconcerned on that issue. Frankly, I think that a very, very large number of people that voted Labour at the last election did so because they weren't the Tories, didn't really know the Reform brand,
You know, the Reform brand is very, very new in the minds of voters. And let's face it, over 95% of Reform candidates on July the 4th were effectively paper candidates. They didn't have the branches, the structures, the money, the advertising, the posters. They were literally paper candidates. And we were just too new to a large chunk of the electorate. So, you know, if you ask me, you know, where will our future increase in vote come from? I think more will come from Labour from this position than it will come from the Conservatives. But, you know, I think you're seeing a realigning of how voters view the old left-right spectrum.
Yes, please. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Beth, you hit the nail on the head. It was a difficult decision. I mean, when you've been with a party, you know, decades, it becomes a family. But you mentioned, you know, about what will people think. Obviously, they don't know until now. Look, during the Brexit years, when I was calling Theresa May to resign, I've been there in the tea room where people avoided me, sat on different tables who were, you know, I considered friends at the time. But I stuck to my guns, and to me it's about doing what's right. And the true friends will stay loyal as friends forever. I think it's times like this which test true friendship, and I hope that the true ones will stay around. Now, regarding, you asked the question, Beth, about do I want to annihilate the Conservatives? Look, I think what we saw in the election, all the, besides, I'd say, a handful, all the decent, true, what I'd say Thatcherite Conservatives, I believe, lost their seat. I mean, I would have loved her as leader, or the likes of Robert Jenrick, but there's only a handful true Conservatives in the elected party, in what I believe, that are left, unfortunately.
Yes, please.
You say you want to be the next party of government. The Conservatives laid out a sort of broad framework yesterday for their plans for immigration. Can you give us a bit more detail on what your immigration policy would be if you were the next party of government? And just one other quick question. Are there any other Conservative or former Conservative MPs up your sleeve?
Yes, I mean, Kemi Badenoch read off an autocue yesterday in a rather robotic fashion, making no specific promises of any kind at all, other than what I'm going to do will be even tougher than leaving the ECHR. You know, they shall be the terrors of the earth. I mean, it was that kind of speech. Look, the Conservative Party had a choice. If they'd voted for Robert Jenrick, they would have voted to leave the ECHR, which would at least have given you the opportunity to deport potential terrorists, to deport those who come here illegally. That court is activist. It's extended its scope in the most remarkable way over the course of the last few years. By the way, something that will get discussed tomorrow, I think, when we have the assisted dying bill before Parliament. You know, the role of the ECHR in that will be a worry in the minds of some members. The Tories had the choice. They could have voted to leave the ECHR to give themselves a start to dealing with the problem. They have rejected it. And they have rejected it. We're very clear. We're very clear. You know, you cannot control your borders or decide who comes to live, work and settle here, all the while you have that convention written into British law. And
can I come on that point, actually, about leaving the ECHR? When I was a Conservative MP, I got a petition with the Conservative Post, Claire, and we got, in the end, over 50,000 signatures in a short space of time. You know, this is what all the people who wrote to me as an MP, they want this. They want to bring back control, and this is the only way that we can do this, and I completely agree with Nigel on this.
Yes, please, here in the front row.
Thank you, Amy Lewis, ITV News. It's a couple of questions for you, Nigel. You've been very critical today of Labour and of the Conservatives.
Well, we've been hearing there the announcement that Andrea Jenkyns has joined Reform UK. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain here on GB News, and the time is just coming up to 14 minutes past midday.
Yes, indeed. The press conference there being held by Reform. We've seen, as Tom just said, Andrea Jenkyns joining Reform, but also some announcements about how Farage is going to professionalise the party and how they really want to contend in next year's local elections and in Welsh elections in the following year. So, big news.
Absolutely. The party announced it had 100,000 members, which does make it the third largest party by membership in British politics, as well as by vote share at the last general election. But this all, of course, lands on the day that we learn net migration was far higher than we even thought last year. We expected it to be only 750,000. It's closer to 1 million. I mean, astonishing numbers. Let's digest all of this now. Delighted to be joined by the former Labour activist, or the former Labour aide, current Labour activist, Stella Santakidou. Stella, thanks so much for joining us. Firstly, what do you make of this shock announcement? Andrea Jenkyns joining Reform UK.
Well, everyone is saying that, of course, we expected this because previously she had called for a pact between Reform and the Conservatives. Obviously, she had all of this smiling, happy photos.
Oh, we seem to have lost Stella there. I'm sure we'll get her back shortly.
Right, we'll see if we can re-establish that.
What was really interesting, though, was that Farage was saying that, yes, they do intend to try and win a few more Conservative voters, but actually they're going after Labour voters next time. Well,
sorry, Stella, we seem to have accidentally cut back to us. Let's just take off where you were.
Hello. Yes, sorry. I was just saying, everyone will be saying that, oh, we expected this because of her appreciation for Nigel Farage, which she expressed throughout the elections during the summer. But I think it's always shocking when someone leaves a party of government, such as the Conservatives, to join an insurgent party like Reform, which some people may say, oh, they're doing better and better, but really there is no promise that they're going to continue doing so. Now, one thing I would say about Andrea Jenkyns, I know that she didn't have a particularly good relationship or a lot of respect for Kemi Badenoch, the new leader. So perhaps that may have fed into her decision to stand down at that time and to find a better opportunity, which, let's be clear, she probably doesn't think she would have an equally good future in the Conservative Party under a leadership that doesn't particularly respect her. So I think that from switching from the Conservatives to the Reform Party, she did kind of get a new opportunity to perhaps achieve more in her political career. So I do think a lot of that had influenced her decision.
Now, Stella, a lot has been made of the number of votes that the Reform Party took from the Conservatives at the last election. But Farage is now clearly going after Labour voters, many who might have considered voting Reform in July, but still voted Labour, but now have been put off by the early record of the Labour government. Is the Labour Party worried about the rise of Reform?
No, if anything, I think that everything that has been happening in the last few months, like the petition, for example, that has been going around asking for a general election, it should be worrying the Conservatives even more, because the Conservatives are still going for the same kind of crowd and they're still struggling to retain that crowd, especially when you're talking about immigration. It is very hard to see how anyone who had anything to do with the government of the last 14 years, like the current leader of the Conservative Party, and she will have to have people in her cabinet who were in her shadow cabinet, who were in the government, who quadrupled immigration when they had promised time and time again that they were going to cut down immigration down to 100,000 people per year. And they failed to do that. So as long as the debate continues to be focused on immigration, which is Nigel Farage's and Reform's bread and butter, it is the Conservatives who have a lot to fear. Even though the Labour Party has made it very clear that they also are going to reduce immigration, they had announced all of these measures, but someone for whom immigration is their top priority, they are a lot more likely to vote for Reform or the Conservatives anyway. And at this point, when they're looking at the two choices, of course they would go for Reform. So for the time being, it really is the Conservatives who should be the most worried about retaining the seats that they have managed to win in the next elections and not being dethroned from their position as the opposition party.
That's one way to look at it, I suppose. The other way, of course, is that the Tories may well have fallen back to their lowest ebb, their sort of baseline vote, just 121 seats in the House of Commons. Meanwhile, the Labour Party won 411 seats, many on the thinnest of margins. We're talking dozens of votes rather than hundreds or thousands of votes for many of these Labour MPs. And the difference in so many of these seats was that Reform vote. Strong second places, strong third places, time and time again in seat after seat after seat. We could be entering an era where really the polls are floating around 21, 22, 23, 24% for each of these three major parties.
I understand where you're coming from, Tom. This is a debate that we've been having over and over again since the elections, how thin the Labour vote seems to be in a lot of places. But in order for the Conservatives or for the Reform Party to take more of these votes from the Labour Party, enough to actually win more seats off of the Labour Party, enough to dethrone Keir Starmer from the government or whoever is going to be the Labour leader next time around in the next elections, they would have to convince people not just on the immigration issue, but they would have to convince people that they are a credible party of government. And this means being able to tackle more issues than just immigration, particularly being trusted with the economy and being trusted, of course, with the NHS and our public services. And this is quite hard to do. It's quite hard to do for the Conservative Party right now, because obviously they're being blamed for how they have treated the public services for the last 14 years, for the state of the country more generally, for infrastructure, for the lack of housing, for all of these issues. And of course it is hard for Reform, because Reform so far has been a single party trick. So they have yet to prove that they have a credible agenda with well thought through policies, and to show in the House of Commons and through parliamentary politics that they are credible enough to get the reins.
Stella, thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us. Tom, I think both are true. Of course, it's a worry to the Conservatives, but in a way, as you said, perhaps Conservatives have reached their lower limit, their floor of how many votes and MPs they're going to get. It's Labour where Reform came second in a lot of the elections in July.
Or could both these things be true? A lot of those seats where Reform came second to the Labour Party, the Tories actually held in the first place.
Yes.
So could it be that whilst the Tories will gain votes and seats at the next election, they won't gain as many because Reform is sort of standing between them and the Labour Party, taking from both but preventing anyone getting some sort of majority?
And Reform should not rule out also the Conservatives going up a few points in the polls, and that also preventing them from winning seats, because our first part of the post system just can't cope with a three-party competition.
It's absolutely brutal. Remember back to 2010 when Nick Clegg, he was more popular than Winston Churchill, so said the papers. And after all those debates, the Lib Dems shot up in the polls. It was going to be a Lib Dem government. What happened? They won fewer MPs in 2010 than they won in 2005. The crunch vote, the fear of a hung parliament, people tend to very often default for one of those major parties at the end of the day.
Interestingly, Nigel Farage did say he wanted to follow the Paddy Ashdown model.
Yes.
Be a charismatic leader that started in the district and the county councils and built a ground operation to get to the point of going into coalition. He did actually say that. Was that a slip of the tongue?
Really interesting stuff there. Well, one to watch. 1st of May 2025 are those local elections in most of the country. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come.
Revised figures for net migration for 2023 now stand at nearly 1 million people, far higher than previous estimates. We're going to be taking a close look after this.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Penelope's, which is situated in the sophisticated hotel Armano in Covent Garden, delivers punchy dishes from the executive chef Fez Ozalgan. London-born, she's of Turkish Cypriot heritage, and at the tender age of 16, she enrolled at catering college. So, it's lovely to see you, Fez. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So you're now in a very prestigious position. I'm always impressed that in the world of chefing, it's possible to get to very senior positions quite young if you're good enough. Talent is rewarded, is it not?
Definitely, yeah. It does take a lot of hard work, for sure. But, yes.
When did you know that you wanted to be a chef?
Honestly, because my parents have a cafe in Barking. And I used to go there when I was younger in school holidays and weekends to help them. And actually, I'll be honest, I just used to really admire everyone calling my dad chef, and that's what I wanted.
And what about your food inspirations? Because I believe the food that you produce now is what, Mediterranean influenced and also to some extent Middle East influenced?
Yeah, and Spanish as well at Penelope's, yeah. So our concept at Penelope's, our CEO, Ariel, he is Israeli, but he grew up in Marbella. So, yeah.
These are the great influences.
Yeah.
What have you brought here today?
OK, so we have our sea bream tartare, which is a really good inspiration of both Spanish and Israeli. It's marinated with harissa, and it's served with a really nice gazpacho sauce, caviar on top.
I wonder whether the camera can see that. It is the most gorgeous coloured sauce on top of my sea bream tartare. That's marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past midday, and fresh immigration statistics have been revised upwards for last year. Yes, yet again. Now net migration for 2023 stands at nearly 1 million people. That's far higher than previous estimates.
Well, Labour has branded the previous government as an open border party who lied to the public. Well, let's dig deeper into the numbers now with our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who joins us in the studio. We're getting kind of used to receiving these statistics now that get revised year on year, but these are shocking numbers, aren't they, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty shocking last year when we reported that 740,000 people had come in over that past year, and that was a very significant 750,000 figure that everyone was very exercised about. But since then, the Office for National Statistics have revised that upwards by 166,000 appears to be the undercount, and that is accounted for by, we're told, 82,000 people who arrived that hadn't been properly accounted for and calculated, compared to 84,000 as well who didn't leave that they had expected to leave as well. Now, they say that their methodology and the way in which they estimate, because, of course, the figures are always provisional and subject to revision once they know actually who has left the country. They're improving all the time, but going forward, for a while at least, we should still expect some more revisions on some of the figures that are coming out. So, for instance, the figure today is 728,000 for the year to June. That could well be revised upwards again when we get the next set of Office for National Statistics figures.
It is stunning that year after year after year, frankly, the number of people that we know are living in the country varies so wildly. It just smacks of a lack of a sense of control over, well, not just import and export of people, but keeping track of people while they're here.
Yes, absolutely. I think, you know, in terms of who is accounted for coming in and out of the country, those processes seem pretty shoddy, to be honest, and, you know, not particularly accurate, judging by the revisions that we get constantly on this. And it's a worry when you're talking about such large numbers of people who are coming into the country. 1.2 million people arrived in the country last year, offset by those who left, taking it down to 728,000. But of course, that has prompted the previous government to bring in a number of changes that have had a sort of downward effect on the number of work visas, for instance, that are being issued. That is 241,000 in the year to June, down 28%. Now, some of that may well be accounted for by the fact that under the Conservatives, they carried out and implemented some changes, some policies around salary thresholds. You have to earn more to be able to qualify for a visa for certain jobs coming into the country. And then, of course, the issue also about dependencies. So care workers, for instance, were allowed to bring dependents over if they were foreign care workers. That has now been ended. And we see that in the figures, actually, where for care workers, they're down significantly as well, to about 50,000 care worker visas that were issued. And then you've got the student visas on top of that, which is an enormous figure. It always is. Some 392,000 student visas that were issued in, I've been saying the year to June, I meant to say the year to September, because these are Home Office figures, so they give us a bit more of an accurate assessment of how this year has gone. And that 390...
a lot more accurate than the ONS.
Well, yeah. That 392,000 figure is down 19%. But when you drill down into that, there's the issue again of dependence.
Yeah.
And one of the policies introduced by the Conservative government was ending, for the vast majority of foreign students, their ability to take over family members. So that showed a 69% drop in the number of dependent visas for students studying here that were issued as well.
I mean, these are extraordinary numbers. A lot of people voted for Brexit over 8 years ago now because they already thought immigration was too high. And of course, it was largely European immigration back then. It's now from the rest of the world. And we've had the last government talking about bringing numbers down. We've had this government talk about bringing numbers down. But essentially, whilst we're addicted to low-wage work and propping up our universities with students from other countries, this number is not going to change, is it?
No, and this government says that it is determined to ensure that there are more opportunities and training for people in this country to take the jobs that have been previously going to many people from overseas. But obviously, you've got to wean the companies, the manufacturers and the like, off their desire to get the likes of foreign labour in as well, which can be cheaper sometimes than UK homegrown talent. We haven't even spoken about asylum seekers, but I think we should as well, because another startling figure buried deep down in the Home Office statistics that's come out is a significant rise in the cost of keeping asylum seekers here. It's gone up by 36% from 3.9 odd billion the previous year to now, the last year to September, up to 5.38 billion. So very, very significant. And those figures, which are, you know, for accommodation, for direct grants to asylum seekers and for those working in the services around them, doesn't actually include the cost of policing the channel and picking up all of these migrants as well. That's separate. Also separate, of course, is £500 million that we've given to the French government to boost its policing around asylum seekers.
Just dizzying numbers there, Mark. We'll be back with you, of course, throughout the programme because these statistics are incredibly important. I must say, though, do stick with us because we will be joining Andrea Jenkyns next, who has just announced, of course, she's joining Reform UK. Stick around for what she has to say after your latest headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. Fast approaching 34 minutes past 12. Well, the top story this lunchtime, former British soldier Daniel Khalife has been found guilty of spying for Iran. Prosecutors say he collected secret and sensitive information on UK special forces and contacted Iranian intelligence soon after joining the army. After 23 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Khalife of breaching the Official Secrets Act and Terrorism Act, but he was cleared of a bomb hoax at his barracks. Khalife escaped Wandsworth Prison in 2023, hiding under a food lorry, but was later caught and admitted breaking out. He claimed he wanted to be a double agent, but his lawyer dismissed it as more Scooby-Doo than 007. Asylum spending has soared to £5.38 billion in 2023 to 24. That's a 36% increase and the highest since records began, nearly 12 times the amount spent just a decade ago. It comes as figures out this morning revealed that net migration, the difference between the number of people arriving in the UK and leaving, has fallen to 728,000 in the year to June 2024. That's a fall also of 20% from its record in 2023 of 906,000. As we've just been hearing, Reform UK says its membership has soared to over 100,000 people. That's up from just 15,000 last year. The party's leader, Nigel Farage, slammed the Tories and Labour over what he called horrendous net migration figures today, despite a 20% drop in the last year. And a major coup for the party. Former Conservative Minister Dame Andrea Jenkyns has joined and will stand as Reform's candidate for Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire. A police investigation has been launched into more than 5 people who may have facilitated the former Harrods boss Mohammed Al-Fayed in his alleged sexual abuse of dozens of women and girls. The force is reviewing evidence spanning from 1977 to 2014, with the youngest victim aged just 13. Al-Fayed, who died last year without facing any charges, allegedly targeted women at businesses he owned. An internal review is also being carried out by the Metropolitan Police into how the force handled claims while he was alive. Thousands of teachers at sixth form colleges across England are on strike today in a dispute over pay. Members of the National Education Union from 32 colleges have walked out, with a rally now taking place outside the Department for Education in London. The strikes are set to last until Friday, and further disruption is possible next week, with NEU members also vowing to strike on Tuesday and Wednesday unless a resolution is found. Union bosses say the government has failed to address the pay gap, leaving members with no choice but to take action. However, Downing Street has defended its stance, saying additional funding is being provided to further education, but the colleges must manage their own pay decisions. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have paid tribute to teenager Liz Hatton, who sadly died yesterday after battling a rare form of cancer. In a tweet on social media, the couple said, "We are so sorry to hear that Liz Hatton has sadly passed away. It was an honour to have met such a brave and a humble woman." They added, "Our thoughts and prayers are with Liz's parents, Vicky and Aaron, and her brother Matteo at this unimaginably difficult time," and signed it from William and Catherine. Last month, a 17-year-old was pictured hugging the Princess of Wales at Windsor Castle after being invited to take pictures there. And let's just bring you one quick bit of breaking news into us from Devon and Cornwall Police this hour. We're hearing that the acting chief constable of Devon and Cornwall Police Force, Jim Colwell, has been suspended reportedly amid an investigation into alleged breaches of professional standards and conduct. That suspension, we hear, follows a decision by the Police and Crime Commissioner, who has also, they say, referred that matter to the Independent Office of Police Conduct. The current acting chief constable, Mr. Colwell, was temporarily leading that force after the previous suspension of the then chief constable, Will Kerr, in July 2023. We will keep across any more details, developments on that story as they come into us. For now, though, that's it from the newsroom. I'll be back with you at 1 o'clock for a full roundup.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A foggy and a frosty start, but most places having a fine day out there today, a little on the chilly side. It is going to turn milder as cloud increases in the west as this weather system starts to approach. We're between two lows, and this area of high pressure brought the clear skies overnight. That's why it was so frosty. Some thick fog still in a few spots this morning, but it is steadily clearing away. And here comes the cloud, just increasing across the southwest of England, southwest Wales and Northern Ireland. A little bit of showery rain coming in here as well, but most places dry with some hazy sunshine and light winds. Temperatures struggling though, starting off well below freezing, only getting to 5 or 6. Late in the day we should hit double figures further west. As we go through this evening, the fog could well thicken up once more, particularly across parts of central and eastern England. The cloud thick enough for the odd little bit of light rain and drizzle in the southwest, maybe Pembrokeshire too. The outbreaks of rain tending to clear away from Northern Ireland and push into western Scotland, so we will see a change here to wetter conditions as we go through the evening. The breeze all the while also picking up in many western areas, whereas light winds further east allowing it to turn pretty chilly pretty quickly again this evening. And there will be, as I say, a few thick fog patches, parts of East Anglia up towards Lincolnshire. So just be aware of that if you're heading out this evening. But they should actually tend to clear as the night goes on because the breeze picks up. The wet weather continues to affect northern Scotland, but otherwise it's a largely dry night. With more breeze, a bit more cloud, not as cold, not as frosty as this morning. Temperatures mostly holding up a touch above freezing. Still feeling pretty chilly tomorrow morning across these eastern areas at 1 or 2 degrees. But again, for many, it's a fine-looking day tomorrow. Dry, bright, hazy sunshine. We'll see the rain returning to Northern Ireland and western Scotland. A few showers for Wales and southwest England late in the day. Still on the chilly side in the east, but generally it is getting milder towards the weekend.
The latest GB News travel.
Southbound on the A1M, all traffic is being temporarily held due to an accident from 19 through to junction 48. Northbound on the M6, there are long delays and 2 lanes closed due to debris on the road following an earlier vehicle fire from Stafford North at 14 to Stoke-on-Trent at junction 15. London bound on the M11, there is a lane closure and queue in traffic to a broken down vehicle just after junction 7 for Harlow. Eastbound on the M27, a lane closure and slow traffic to a broken down vehicle from junction 5 for Southampton Airport and Eastleigh through to Hedge End. And the westbound side of the M27, that's looking very slow. There are 3 lanes closed to a multi-vehicle accident just before junction 8 for Hamble. For now, that's your very latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:41, and let's return to that breaking news that's come in the last half an hour that former Conservative MP for Morley and Outwood, Andrea Jenkyns, has joined Reform UK. Here's how she was introduced by the party leader, Nigel Farage.
The 100,000 member happens to be a former Conservative Member of Parliament. Who'd believe that? Isn't that extraordinary that it should have worked out that way? Her name is Dame Andrea Jenkyns, and not only is Andrea joining the party, but after an internal selection process, she has now been selected as our candidate, and she will run to be the newly created Mayor of Lincolnshire on May the 1st next year.
Well, Andrea Jenkyns, of course, was a Conservative MP for 9 years, unseating Ed Balls with her first win in 2015. But she'll now, of course, stand as a mayoral candidate in the inaugural Greater Lincolnshire Metro Mayor election next year.
To the people of Greater Lincolnshire, in me you have someone who will fight for you. I always do what is right, and I always take the common sense approach. We stand today, the British people feel betrayed. Our culture, our values and our communities are under siege.
Well, in that press conference, Nigel Farage and Reform UK spoke about their party's growth and increasing professionalisation with the news that Jenkyns was member number 100,000. So are Reform moving in the right direction?
What a convenient counter ticker that they were doing. It was just waiting for 999.
Hold on, the other 99,999. Just wait there.
You're not allowed to join until Andrea's done a press conference. Well, let's cross to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, who's now joined by Andrea Jenkyns. Olivia, take it away.
Hello, yes, I'm here with Andrea Jenkyns, the woman of the moment, I think, 100,000th member of Reform. There's a lot of sort of momentum in the room today. Reform's gone from 15,000 members to 100,000 in a year. That was the big announcement from today. What was it that made you decide to jump ship?
Because I'm politically aligned, and I've seen behind the scenes what Z is doing is really professionalising the party, the organisation. So I think it's great. But ultimately, what Nigel and the team are saying, I'm at home actually. I'm politically aligned with them. We worked together during the Brexit years, and it feels like now's the right time to do this.
What is it about Reform's immigration policy specifically? Because we've heard a lot about how they're not happy with the current plan from Labour, they're not happy with what the Conservatives are saying. What specifically differently would a Reform government do to get immigration down?
I mean, there's going to be further policy announcements. This is my first day here. However, to me, what Nigel said about the ECHR, I mean, Robert Jenrick was saying this, and I had a petition when I was an MP, and we got like over 50,000 signatures. I feel this is the way that we're going to control illegal migration.
Do you think that Kemi Badenoch stands any chance of being a success as leader of the Conservative Party? If Robert Jenrick had won that Conservative leadership election, do you think you'd still be a member of the Conservative Party?
I backed Robert and I backed Pretty before him. To me, they are the true Thatcherite Conservatives, where I'm aligned with them. However, you know, we are where we are, and I've always actually believed in Nigel. I mean, look, I put him on my Conservative leaflet. If that's not more of an endorsement for Nigel Farage, what he's doing, then I don't know what is.
You're not known for your loyalty towards Prime Ministers. You mentioned it in that press conference there. Yeah. Do you think you'll be
Boris?
Oh, you were loyal to Boris. That's true. Do you?
And David Cameron.
And David Cameron, but I think you were the first to write the letter of no confidence in Rishi Sunak, or perhaps the only public.
And Theresa May.
And Theresa May. Do you really think that you can be loyal to Nigel Farage now?
Look, we are politically aligned, and I mean, I'll always be an outspoken northerner. That is in my DNA, and I'll always call out what I disagree with. But ultimately, if I look at the core policies of Reform and what Nigel, Richard and the team's doing, then I'm aligned to them. So to me, there's not going to be any problems.
Are there any Conservative current sitting MPs who you think would be better suited to Reform?
There's a few lost their seat. I mean, I don't want to embarrass them by mentioning...
No, go on.
No, I wouldn't do that, mentioning their names. And discussions have been happening in the background. So I guess let's see if others follow.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Very good to speak to you. So that was Andrea Jenkyns, who's standing for Reform Metro Mayor of Lincolnshire, talking to us here today. It did feel like a pretty exciting day in the Reform room, but as for substance of their policy on immigration, we do need to hear some more details.
Well, Olivia Attlee, thank you very much indeed for joining us there live from the scene of the moment.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We have lots more coming up for you on today's show. Animal rights activists are up in arms as they demand the sly old fox pub change its name because it's offensive to foxes.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Does it make you all nostalgic? Do you miss the jungle looking at that?
I do, actually. I mean, it was one of the highlights of my career. I really enjoyed it because I'm like a little boy. I love being outdoors and taking the mick and arguing, and I love all that, you know, so that's what it's all about. It's so much emotional stuff because food plays so much a part in being in the jungle, and it really gets your sort of mental bits going, you know. I would love to go back. I mean, maybe there's a show called Geriatrics in the Jungle. I think that might be a good one.
And did you ever have to shout those immortal words, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here?
No, I didn't. I think Daniela Westbrook was the only one who bottled out. Most of us stuck it to the end, well, as far as the end as we could get. We had something called the Terrible Trio. It was me, Phil Tufnell, and Linda Barker, and we were the late night drinkers, and smokers in those days. Yeah, we just took the mick out of everything, really.
And I was just saying before we came to you, Anthony, there's something a bit perverse about how we all enjoy, my kids as well, absolute hysterics at some people's clear distress. I mean, on the opening show, this guy, Dean, who we're watching now, they were having to eat, I don't want to use the word at this hour of the morning, but part of a male anatomy combined with some eyeballs mushed up into a smoothie.
Yeah.
And he was drinking it. He said, "My IBS! My IBS!" And we were just laughing.
Play havoc with
It's so weird, isn't it, that we find that so funny?
I'm looking at the two Barrys, you know, Barry McGuigan and 2K Barry as my sort of favourites, if you want.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 to 1, and the animal rights group, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, has been accused of undermining real issues after asking a pub to change its name, claiming the name is offensive to foxes.
Well, the group has written to the owners of the Sly Old Fox in Birmingham, saying the name was derogatory. Instead, they asked them to consider swapping Sly to Clever.
Right. Well, joining us from outside the pub in question is our very own reporter, Will Hollis. Will, is this a serious story? Is it? I'm checking the date. Is it April the 1st? Are we being had?
Well, it's not April the 1st. It's still very firmly in November, but the pub here in Birmingham has been serving customers since 1891, more than 100 years. It's famed locally as a place to get a really good craft ale as well as somewhere to have a nice meal. And most people might leave the theatre and then head on over there for a drink. And they've known it as the Sly Old Fox for a very long time. But as you say, PETA, the animal rights charity, has gotten in touch with them via a letter and put out a public statement as well, saying that instead of calling the pub the Sly Old Fox, they should rebrand and call it the Clever Fox. Why? Well, they say that sly implies that a fox is cunning and deceitful, and this is unfair to foxes, which are often branded as pests. This is a direct quote from PETA's Vice President of Programmes, Elisa Allen. The words we use matter, and perpetuating negative stereotypes about foxes makes it easier to justify hunting or poisoning these unique and intelligent beings. It's important to remember that hunting foxes is illegal. It's been illegal for around about 20 years. This isn't a one-off. This isn't the first time this has happened. PETA has, or PETA, however you want to label it, pronounce it, has done this before. Last year, they got in touch with a pub in Stoke-on-Trent, which is called the Old Bulldog. They said that by labelling a pub the Old Bulldog, it encourages people to get brachycephalic breeds of dogs. Those are dogs like bulldogs or pugs, which often have breathing problems. When I visited that pub last year, a pub patron said to me, well, it used to be called the Sea Lion before. Did that encourage people to go out and buy sea lions? No, it didn't. So this is common. PETA have clearly generated a lot of traffic around this. It's important to remember that while a lot of people are talking about this, some people have described it as a ridiculous statement. Some people have said it trivialises a serious issue. The people that we haven't heard from yet are the pub themselves, which have been very quiet for any media requests.
Well, an interesting stunt, if nothing less, although, of course, utterly ridiculous. I don't think foxes can read, last time I checked.
And who asked the foxes? I mean,
maybe they like it.
Yeah, they might love the sort of attention. But Will Hollis, thank you very much indeed for bringing us that. And get a pint in while you're at it.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and MasterChef host Greg Wallace has stepped down as historical allegations of misconduct are investigated. Former Newsnight host Kirsty Walk is among 13 people who have accused him of making inappropriate sexual comments. That's to come shortly.
Chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A foggy and a frosty start, but most places having a fine day out there today, a little on the chilly side. It is going to turn milder as cloud increases in the west as this weather system starts to approach. We're between two lows, and this area of high pressure brought the clear skies overnight. That's why it was so frosty. Some thick fog still in a few spots this morning, but it is steadily clearing away. And here comes the cloud, just increasing across the southwest of England, southwest Wales and Northern Ireland. A little bit of showery rain coming in here as well, but most places dry with some hazy sunshine and light winds. Temperatures struggling though, starting off well below freezing, only getting to 5 or 6. Late in the day we should hit double figures too. The outbreaks of rain tending to clear away from Northern Ireland and push into western Scotland, so we will see a change here to wetter conditions as we go through the evening. The breeze all the while also picking up in many western areas, whereas light winds further east allowing it to turn pretty chilly pretty quickly again this evening. And there will be, as I say, a few thick fog patches, parts of East Anglia up towards Lincolnshire. So just be aware of that if you're heading out this evening. But they should actually tend to clear as the night goes on because the breeze picks up. The wet weather continues to affect northern Scotland, but otherwise it's a largely dry night. With more breeze, a bit more cloud. Not as cold, not as frosty as this morning. Temperatures mostly holding up a touch above freezing. Still feeling pretty chilly tomorrow morning across these eastern areas at 1 or 2 degrees. But again, for many, it's a fine-looking day tomorrow. Dry, bright, hazy sunshine. We'll see the rain returning to Northern Ireland and western Scotland. A few showers for Wales and southwest England late in the day. Still on the chilly side in the east, but generally it is getting milder towards the weekend.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This is a topic very close to my heart. I have become fully convinced that social media, smartphones are one of the primary causes of mental health problems in children and many other serious problems beside. Lots of governments are starting to talk about this, but the Australians are well ahead in their use of legislation. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I've got 3 young children, and I'm really concerned about... I mean, they're too young to be on social media, but I'm really concerned about what lies ahead for them. I'm not sure I support what Australia's doing, not because I don't think it's a good idea to ensure that age verification is right. I'm just not sure that the age 16 is appropriate. But that's progress. If we effectively, as I do, accept the point that we need some sort of control, then we can move to a proper debate about whether that's 16, 14, 13, whatever it may be. And of course, there are age restrictions on things like Facebook. I think from memory it is 13.
Yes,
but
it's a tick box.
But it's a tick box. So all you can do is you can just knock. If you're 11 years old, you can just predate your date of birth by 2 years, and you can get on. I think what Australia is proposing is interesting because it will stop young people, maybe without their parents' knowledge, short-circuiting the system because they're going to be asking for proper age verification and ID. That's definitely something we should do in the UK because it's enforcing the existing law. Query, is 16 the right age, Miriam?
I completely agree with it. It's something I actually said should have been done before. And I think what is good about it is that for a long time, a lot of governments have been saying that the actual social media companies should take more responsibility, but they're not going to because it hurts their bottom line. The most voracious users are younger users. So they will pledge that, oh, I'll put the tick box in, but the kid is the one who's going to actually tick the box. So doing something like this is saying that, OK, we will put in legislation that damages your bottom line. And I think it will force the hand because they've said it's only 12 months and they will reevaluate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 28th of November. I'm Miriam Cates.
And I'm Tom Harwood. Immigration statistics have been revised upwards for last year yet again, with net migration for 2023 now standing at nearly 1 million people, an increase that puts this year's 20% drop into some perspective.
And former Conservative Minister Dame Andrea Jenkyns says the British public feel betrayed after she joins Reform UK as their 100,000th member.
To the people of Greater Lincolnshire, in me you have someone who will fight for you. I always do what is right, and I always take the common sense approach.
Away from the BBC show MasterChef, it's been reported that the former Newsnight host Kirsty Walk is among 13 people who've accused the presenter of making inappropriate sexual comments.
And a brand new Ofcom study reveals youngsters are spending a whopping 6 hours a day online, a sharp increase from last year. This comes as in the last hour, Australia has passed a landmark piece of legislation banning under-16s from using social media. Should the UK follow suit? Big news from Australia, first Western country to ban social media for under-16s. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they roll it out because there are some big technical questions about how you introduce age verification, but good on them for trying because someone's got to start somewhere.
And frankly, what is social media? I mean, it's very easy to see, OK, under-16s are going to be banned from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, fine. What about these big message boards? What about big WhatsApp chats that I understand many children in schools are parts of big WhatsApp chats, and actually that's where a lot of the bullying goes on.
Well, I think WhatsApp does count as social media. We certainly have definitions in this country. I don't know if it's the same as Australia, but I think there are certainly some dreadful bits of content online that are really harmful. But I think even more concerning is the amount of time, because even if you're spending 6 hours a day doing something that in itself is harmless, what are you not doing as a child? What experiences are you not getting that actually your brain and your body need in order to develop into an adult?
Is Reddit a social media website?
Probably.
I'm just remembering, there are certain websites that are full of information that would be that are great to sort of explore. Well, I don't know. The hours I spent, maybe I was atypical. The hours I spent on Wikipedia.
You were definitely atypical.
If
I hope you didn't believe it all.
If you've got a Wikipedia account, is that a social media account, or is that just?
My guess would be
there's so
not
much grey area
Wikipedia,
here,
but
right?
yes, any platforms where individuals can chat with each other, because although it sounds innocuous, actually there are so many predators hanging out on these places and in gaming apps as well that are grooming children. And again, it's not just the harmful content. Some children do escape that harmful content, but it's the amount of time and how addictive it is and how compelling it is compared to reading a book, going outside. And a lot of people, young people, are struggling now, not able to make eye contact, finding it very difficult to form relationships because they just haven't had that experience in the teenage years that previously you would have had.
Does that mean that some of these online video games will be counted as social media?
I think it depends on the chat function and whether or not you can ban, people you don't know from contacting you. It's not clear cut, and that's why it's really interesting what Australia are doing. They've bitten the bullet. They're going to give it a go, and I think there'll be some learnings for other countries.
No, I find this absolutely fascinating as someone who is not Gen Z, but is sort of tail end of millennial. So some of this stuff, but not all of this stuff, was around when I was in school. I don't know. Did it do me that much harm?
But
then again, maybe I didn't get a
how much
smartphone
it's
until I was
changed,
16 because they weren't around until I was 16.
Every year, the time spent online is going up and up and up. So it's a new problem, even since you were at school. It's astonishing how rapidly it's changing. Well, do send your views on this and many other issues that we've covered today. Go to gbnews.com/your say and let us know what you think.
Absolutely. All that to come after your headlines with Sam Francis. Very good afternoon to you. Fast approaching 5 minutes past 1, and the top story this lunchtime. Well, asylum spending has soared to £5.38 billion in 2023 to 24. That's a 36% increase and the highest since records began, nearly 12 times the amount spent just a decade ago. It comes as figures revealed this morning showed that net migration, that's the difference between the number of people arriving in the UK and leaving, has fallen to 728,000 in the year to June of this year. That's also a fall of 20% from its 2023 record of 906,000. Former British soldier Daniel Khalife has been found guilty of spying for Iran. Prosecutors say he collected secret and sensitive information on UK special forces and contacted Iranian intelligence soon after he joined the army. After 23 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Khalife of breaching the Official Secrets Act and the Terrorism Act, but he was also cleared of a bomb hoax at his barracks. Khalife escaped Wandsworth Prison in 2023, hiding under a food lorry, but was later caught and admitted breaking out. He claimed he wanted to be a double agent, but his lawyer dismissed it as more Scooby-Doo than 007. Reform UK has said its membership's now soared to over 100,000 people, up from just 15,000 this time last year. Party leader Nigel Farage slammed the Conservatives and Labour over what he called horrendous net migration figures, despite a 20% drop in the last year. And in a major coup for the party, former Conservative Minister Dame Andrea Jenkyns has joined and will stand as Reform's candidate for Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire. The former Newsnight host Kirsty Walk is among more than 10 people accusing MasterChef presenter Greg Wallace of making inappropriate sexual comments. The 60-year-old's now stepped down from the cooking show as the BBC investigates allegations of historical misconduct. The show's production company says the complaints were made this week and an external review is also underway. Mr Wallace, who's been with MasterChef since 2005, is fully cooperating with that investigation. He's previously denied claims from 2018, saying that they were promptly investigated and found he hadn't made any inappropriate comments. A police investigation has been launched into more than 5 people who may have facilitated the former Harrods boss Mohammed Al-Fayed in his alleged sexual abuse of dozens of women and girls. The Metropolitan Police Force is reviewing evidence spanning from 1977 to 2014, with the youngest victim aged just 13. Al-Fayed, who died last year without facing any charges, allegedly targeted women at businesses he owned. An internal review is also being carried out by the Met Police into how the force handled claims about Al-Fayed while he was alive. Thousands of teachers at sixth form colleges across England are on strike today in a dispute over pay. Members of the National Education Union from more than 30 colleges have walked out, with a rally taking place earlier outside the Department for Education. The strikes are set to last until Friday and further disruptions possible next week, with NEU members also vowing to strike on Tuesday and Wednesday, unless, they say, a resolution is found. Union bosses also say the government's failed to address the pay gap, leaving members with no choice but to take action. Researchers have described the first new treatment for asthma attacks in 50 years as a game-changer. The injection dampens the part of the immune system that can be triggered in flare-ups of both serious asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. The trial, led by King's College London, found that the injection is more effective than steroid tablets, reducing treatment failures by 4 times. Steroids, the standard treatment, can cause severe side effects like diabetes and osteoporosis, making the injection a safer alternative. Researchers say it could soon be used not just in A&E, but also in GP practices or at home. The Prince and Princess of Wales have paid tribute to teenager Liz Hatton, who sadly died yesterday after battling a rare form of cancer.
In a tweet, the couple said, "We are so sorry to hear that Liz Hatton has sadly passed away. It was an honour, they say, to have met such a brave and humble young woman." Adding, "Our thoughts and prayers are with Liz's parents and her brother at this unimaginably difficult time." Well, last month, the 17-year-old was pictured hugging the Princess of Wales at Windsor Castle after being invited to take pictures there. And Sir Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, is swapping Parliament for a career in music. He's hoping for a Christmas #1 in the pop charts with this song. Take a listen. The song, titled Love Is Enough, was recorded with a full orchestra and 20 singers and was inspired by the Lib Dem leader's own experience of being a teenage carer. Mr Davies says the single highlights the love and resilience of carers and hopes it will strike a chord with families this season. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's back to Tom and...
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:10 and immigration statistics have been revised upwards for last year yet again, with net migration for 2023 now standing at nearly 1 million people, which is far higher than previous estimates. And Labour have branded the previous government as an open border party who lied to the public.
Well, how things have changed. Coventry has seen over 22,000 arrivals from overseas in a single year, being described as a city at migration breaking point. So let's head to Coventry now and speak to our GB News reporter, Adam Cherry. Adam, Coventry is a place that really is feeling the impact of migration.
Absolutely, guys, yes. And I'm joined now by Conservative councillor Gary Ridley, who's here to chat to us about the impact that net migration is having on the country and the city. Gary, these migration statistics are extraordinary. What impact will that have, and is having on the city here?
Well, I think Coventry's always been a welcoming city, and we've done more than most over the years to help genuine asylum seekers. But I think people are now starting to question the dispersal process in particular. I think there's only 4 local authorities in the country who are supporting more asylum seekers than we are. And the whole process is very unilateral. The government sends asylum seekers here. There's no consultation about it. It's usually with very short notice. And the asylum dispersal grant that we receive is not enough to cover the additional costs the city faces. So really, I think there is huge concern here locally that this is having an effect on service delivery, and I think somebody's got to change.
Just talk to us about that impact on public services. What impact is it having on hospitals, schools, infrastructure, so on?
Well, if you think about the kind of people that are coming here, they're vulnerable people, they may have very specific needs, and I think the reports that we get tell us that certainly sort of local health services in particular are being put at strain. You know, they're already very stretched to start with, education facilities as well. But I think really the current situation can't go on. You know, it's been going on for a couple of years now. 4 local authorities in the country doing more than we are. The council's got to take legal action, and I think local government in general has got to push back on the government, because what we need is a fairer, more effective solution than we've got now.
So talk to us about that legal action. You want to legally pressure the government to stop sending so many asylum seekers to the city, is that correct?
Yes, so as I say, you know, we have had a lot of asylum seekers sent to Coventry over the years. We are a welcoming city. We've done our bit. We've done more than most. But at the end of the day, it's not right for the government to keep unilaterally sending people here without any consultation with local service providers. You know, it's often at sort of 24 hours notice. We don't have any say over this at all. It's just not fair to the people of Coventry.
Now, Downing Street today are saying that these net migration statistics prove that the previous Conservative government conducted an experiment in open borders. Are they right?
Well, look, at the end of the day, you know, we had an election a few months ago. The people did what they did. You know, as a local councillor, I've got to work with the government that's there at the moment, and I would say that the onus is on them to come up with a plan. You know, now, since the election, what we've seen is the Labour government promised that they were going to stop using hotels for asylum seekers. They've already breached that promise. You know, they've torn up the Rwanda agreement. They haven't put anything in its place. And actually, what we've just seen from this Labour government so far It's not encouraging at all. So it's up to them to come up with with a way forward. You know, it's up to my colleagues in Westminster to find a way forward from our own party as well. But ultimately, what I would say, as a local councillor here in Coventry, is I am deeply concerned about the impact on local services. It's not sustainable. It's got to change.
Finally, do you worry about the impact that this might have on reforms growth in local councils? We've heard Nigel Farage today say that they've gained now up to 100,000 members. Migration is a key part of their platform. Does that concern you as a politician?
Well, as an individual councillor, I'm more involved in getting on with the job. You know, I was elected in May just a few months ago, and I was very pleased to accept that term on behalf of the people of Woodlands Ward once again. I'm focused on getting on with the job in hand. Others can get on with what they've got to do, but the situation in Coventry has got to change, and it's got to change fast.
Gary Ridley, thank you very much for joining us on GB News. Well, there you go, guys. A city at breaking point, as it's described. 22,000 people in the last year, strains on public services, and the council now threatening to take legal action against the government over these changes.
Well, Adam Cherry there, thank you very much for that report. Now, it's clear that these are figures for illegal migration, which is obviously different to the figures announced today, which is mainly for legal migration, so people coming with visas. But both types of immigration are putting severe strain on public services, as Adam said there.
Yeah, so hard to plan for just about anything, especially when some of our largest cities in the UK have had their housing targets cut by the incoming government. Well, where are these million-plus extra people going to live? You can see how the two policies just don't match.
Yeah, I mean, it is really hard to actually get your head around these kind of size of figures. You know, we know we're a big country, we've got a population well in excess of 60 million, but even so, 1 million or so each year, overall migration, obviously net is slightly lower than that, is a huge proportion, really, of the population. And a lot of them are students, so they'll be living in student accommodation. A lot of them are dependents, so they'll be coming over as family groups. It's not that you need a million new houses, but it's still a substantial
accommodation,
pressure.
the quality of student accommodation. Your former colleague Neil O'Brien was just talking about this yesterday, that there are now 24-hour queues in Oxford of students sleeping on the streets overnight, trying to find somewhere to live for the next academic year. Wow,
it's astonishing. Yeah, some of these universities have expanded well beyond their local towns' ability to house them. Yeah, I mean, a lot of problems being caused by immigration, which essentially is a way of papering over cracks in the labour market, in the birth rate, all kind of things like that, that really we need to sort out once for all.
But in other news, the Metropolitan Police are investigating over 5 individuals suspected of assisting or enabling Mohammed Al Fayed's sexual offences. This new investigation was initiated after 90 alleged victims came forward following a documentary that exposed the extent of the billionaire's predatory behaviour.
Well, joining us now from New Scotland Yard is our correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, what can you tell us about this latest development?
Good afternoon. Well, the word the Metropolitan Police are using is facilitated, allegedly facilitated. Those are the more than 5, as you say, individuals who allegedly helped Mohammed Al Fayed carry out his literally decades of alleged abuse. The allegations date from 1977 all the way up to 2014, and the Metropolitan Police gave us an update, has given us an update, and has even spoken on camera. Commander Stephen Clayman of the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Crime Command has delivered a statement, and this is what he had to say.
Now, while Al Fayed is no longer alive to face prosecution, we are determined to bring anyone who is suspected to have played a part in his offending to justice. As a result of inquiries so far, we have now launched an investigation into a number of people associated with Mohammed Al Fayed. This investigation will look at what role those individuals may have played in facilitating or enabling his offending, and what opportunities they had to protect victims from his horrendous abuse.
Now, since the BBC's Bombshell documentary that aired in September, 150 people have contacted the Metropolitan Police with either allegations or information about this abuse. And from that 150, the Met has identified 90 new alleged victims, some with multiple allegations against Mohammed Al Fayed. And that, of course, is in addition to the 21 historical allegations, or 21 historical victim survivors. The youngest out of all of them at the time of the alleged offence was 13 years old. Now, as we know, Mohammed Al Fayed, the former owner of Harrods and Fulham FC Football Club, the billionaire, he died last year at the age of 94. He never faced any charges. One alleged victim told the Daily Telegraph that he was actually arrested in 2013, but of course was never brought to any kind of charges. Files were submitted by the Metropolitan Police to the Crown Prosecution Service on 2 occasions, 2009 and 2015, but that did not come to anything. 2 women have made formal complaints to the Metropolitan Police over their handling of historical allegations. Those complaints date back to 2008. So the Met has now referred itself to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. They've also launched their own internal investigation. So what's happening now is they're trawling through all of the historical allegations against Mohammed Al Fayed, which includes 50,000 pages of evidence. Then, of course, they're having to look at these 90 new victims who have come forward with allegations against Al Fayed as well. But perhaps more crucially is looking at how this man got away with what he did for so long, looking at who knew what and when, and of course who turned a blind eye.
An absolutely fascinating story. Cameron, thank you for keeping on top of it for us. Perhaps more from you later in the programme. It does seem extraordinary that time and time again, it's not until someone has died that we actually start to uncover what they were really like. And that raises some serious questions over the power of very, very wealthy people in our society.
Well, it's an extraordinary number of people coming forward after that documentary, obviously being given the courage, or perhaps they thought, some of them, that it was only them and therefore that they wouldn't be believed. That could have happened. But I think what's also interesting is that for it to have gone on for that long, there must have been people that knew. And that's clearly what this maybe even helped. And that's clearly what this investigation is about. But it's a really, really tragic story. And I don't know if you watched the documentary. I did. It was absolutely harrowing.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come on today's programme.
Yes, Australia has passed a landmark piece of legislation banning under-16s from using social media. This comes as an Ofcom study here in the UK reveals that British youngsters are spending a whopping 6 hours a day online. More on that shortly.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
But it turns out there's a growing number of grandparents who are now taking up the hobby.
And not all of them are male. 7 million gamers are aged over 50, 7 million of them. And we're going to introduce you to one this morning. Her name's Kath Bowie. She's 76 years of age, and Kath has become a worldwide star of the game Fortnite. Good to see you, Kath.
Hello, good morning to both of you.
And tell me this, Kath, is Bowie your real name?
Bowie. Bowie. Yes, it is my real name, yes.
And you do it a Bowie and not a Bowie?
It's a Bowie, yes, definitely Bowie, yes.
Bowie or Bowie?
Bowie.
Bowie.
But that's not what the Jim Bowie was called, or Jim Bowie was called in the Alamo. He was a Bowie.
No, but that's what I'm called, Kath Bowie.
Oh,
She's their own superstar.
You are your own superstar. You are indeed. Well, so we're led to believe, Kath, that there's nobody else like you, or very few people like you, but there is. There is lots of people your age, your stage, doing what you do.
Yes, there's not a lot that streams. OK, Fortnite, but there's definitely plenty that plays. Any game, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be Fortnite. It can be any game.
So Kath, how did you get started in all of this?
Oh, yeah, well, it's 7 years ago, actually. I walked into my teenage grandson's bedroom and just saw him playing what I now know, of course, what I play is Fortnite. And that was the very first week that Epic had released it. And it was just really love at first sight.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 23 minutes past 1, and a recent study by the media regulator Ofcom has found that people aged 18 to 24 are now spending an average of 6 hours online every day.
Well, that's a significant jump from last year's report, which showed this age group were online for just 4 hours and 26 minutes a day. It comes as Australia passes a world-first social media ban for children under 16. As many are left asking if the UK should follow suit in this pursuit.
Well, joining us now is the Director of Safe Screens, Arabella Skinner. Arabella, thank you for joining us. An astonishing finding that the amount of screen time has gone up so much in just 1 year.
I know, it's quite incredible, isn't it? And we're used to seeing these figures jump, but we're not used to seeing it jump quite that much. But it's also worth noting there was recently a big piece of work by Parentkind, who go out and talk to thousands and thousands of parents. And when you're looking at younger children, you're talking about 14% of children are spending 7 hours a day after school on the phones. And the average is 3 hours 20, and that's out of school time. So this is something that's affecting everyone, and it's a serious issue, particularly as children seem to know that this is a problem.
So obviously there are some activities online that that are clearly very harmful. We know a lot about some of the content that has even led some children to take their own lives. But even if the content is fairly bland or in theory harmless, what kind of things are children missing out on by spending so much time on their phones?
You're absolutely right, Miriam. There's some really key elements in this. For example, there's work that King's College London have been doing that have looked at problematic smartphone usage, and about a quarter of children exhibit this kind of behavioural issue, and they see it as a problem. WHO did work globally, and they say that 20% of 11-year-old girls have problematic social media usage in the UK. And let's remember, they shouldn't even be on social media, because most social media is restricted to over 13s, which is another thing the Ofcom report brings up. But as you say, it's all the other things that our children are missing out on. One really obvious one is eyesight. We know myopia has gone up from sort of 20-odd% 15 years ago to 36%. And that's pretty much the one thing that stops myopia is spending time outside. And because children are spending time on screens, they're not outside, and therefore we've got a huge increase in short-sightedness, which then has a knock-on impact, because you know what it's like. If you get glasses at 10, 11, 12, you're much less likely to play sport. You're much less likely to do all these other things. And not only that, there's a huge knock-on impact for the NHS for costs. So that's just one small area that we don't normally think about as a harms for the increase in screens and smartphones.
How much do we risk sliding into an accidental moral panic here? Because there are some truly heart-wrenching stories of particularly young girls, one or two in the last few years, who took their own lives. But I've been looking at the data more broadly, and teenage suicide is actually down in recent years compared to where it was 5 or even 10 years ago. There's only one section of society where we've seen suicide rising, and that's middle-aged men who don't seem to be the ones who are most stuck to their phones. Is there a risk that we look at some tragic individual examples and extrapolate from that a trend that the data simply doesn't show?
I think there could be a risk if we thought that suicide was the only dangerous outcome and harmful outcome of this. It absolutely isn't. And obviously for those families and parents that have suffered it, that is the absolute, that you can't imagine anything more than that. However, when you look at the overall risk of harms about every element, The really important thing when you talk to health experts in this area is it touches every single part of the child. It touches the physical part, like the eyesight. It touches musculoskeletal issues. There's huge issues with children coming in with speech and language problems. We're talking about 25% increase, and that's through early years, not engaging with their parents and not engaging with screens, but also us as adults spending far too much time on our phones and not engaging with children and talking to children. And this is one of the things that Ofcom has shown is the increased area. You then get on to the other areas that we were talking around, kind of these harmful content. And we spend a lot of time talking about harmful content, and it's really important, the elements around eating disorders and algorithms that push that. There's loads of evidence coming out now that shows, for example, they did a lot of work looking at TikTok, and they looked at children with eating disorders and children without. And this is passive usage. So this is not children liking videos. It's actually, they just lingered. And within a couple of days, they were 4,000 times more likely to get toxic eating disorder, toxic eating videos in there. So really horrible stuff. And 300% more likely to get diet. This is the same for kind of misogyny. The University of Kent they created archetypes of boys, and within 5 days, if the boy's saying I'm lonely or I'm not interested, they were getting sort of 56% of their feed was around anti-women and misogyny within there. So this doesn't mean that every child is going to end up in a suicidal situation, but it does mean we're skewing what our children are seeing. We also know from longitudinal studies that 9 to 14-year-olds who spend more time on the screen, within 2 years, they have increased symptoms of eating disorders and the things that link towards long-term eating disorder problems. If these are really serious issues, and we need to kind of get away from just worrying about the most awful thing to actually the inherent issues that are impacting all our children all of the time. And what they're missing out on as well.
Now, Arabella, interesting development in Australia today. I think they've become the first country to actually attempt to legislate to keep children off social media. Do you think that's something potentially that the UK government might follow?
I think it's really good that some legislators are actually trying to take on big tech and trying to challenge it. There's some really positive things around it because they're actually going to do it. It will also force big tech to think about how do they actually make age verification work. They've got a year to look at that. I mean, honestly, the amount of money these guys spend, they spend more than most countries on R&D. There's no excuse for not being able to sort out their age verification. However, I think the fine is something like 25 million. That's kind of money that these companies can find behind the sofa. We have to find a way of making it not just part of the cost of business. There's also a risk that we just think that by going for social media, we've solved the problem. It doesn't solve our early years issue. It doesn't solve our attentions issue. It doesn't solve the eyesight issue. And actually, what do you define as social media? Because, for example, a lot of the fitness apps are really dangerous for kids with eating disorders. It brings in a competitive element within it. It also has a sort of social media influencer field, which is an area I hadn't really thought about. But actually, and it also has a messaging area in there. So there's an issue about where does this definition go and how does it work?
Yeah, there's a worry there also on the other side of things about the thin end of the wedge. Are we going to ban all kids from using running apps just because some kids have eeting disorders? I mean, there's
well, you can run without an app, Tom. I'm sure it was possible when I was a child.
I'm not convinced, Miriam. I'm not.
I think this is the actual challenge.
Yes, thank you so much, Arabella. Really good to hear from you. Thanks for that.
Indeed.
A very difficult problem.
Yeah, no, and there are always going to be these edge cases and these grey areas that are.
But that's why a straight-out age limit is so much easier than trying to say this content good, this content bad, because then you do get into the problem with censorship and things like that.
Until you get your precocious 15-year-old who discovers he can download a VPN.
Well, there will be.
There will American and get on the apps anyway.
Just like there are some kids who buy alcohol underage. There are. But if you can solve it for 90%, then you've made a societal difference, haven't you? Anyway, lots more coming up on today's show. The highly anticipated assisted dying bill will be debated in Parliament tomorrow as former Prime Minister David Cameron says his mind has been changed on the issue. That and much more to come after your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 1:32 exactly. The top story this hour. Asylum spending has soared to £5.38 billion in 2023 to 24. That is a 36% increase and the highest on record. It's nearly 12 times the amount spent just a decade ago. It comes as figures out this morning reveal that net migration, the difference between the number of people arriving in the UK and leaving, has fallen to 728,000 in the year to June of this year. That's also a fall of 20% from its 2023 record of 906,000. Former British soldier Daniel Khalife has been found guilty of spying for Iran. Prosecutors say he collected secret and sensitive information on UK special forces and contacted Iranian intelligence soon after joining the army. After 23 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Khalife of breaching the Official Secrets Act and the Terrorism Act, but he was cleared of a bomb hoax at his barracks. Khalife escaped Wandsworth Prison last year, hiding under a food lorry, but was later caught and admitted breaking out. He claimed he wanted to be a double agent, but his lawyer dismissed that as more Scooby-Doo than 007. Reform UK says its membership has soared to over 100,000 people, up from just 15,000 last year. Party leader Nigel Farage slammed the Conservatives and Labour in a speech earlier over what he called horrendous net migration figures, despite today's 20% drop over the last year. And in a major coup for the party, former Conservative Minister Dame Andrea Jenkyns has joined and will stand as Reform's candidate for Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire. Kirsty Walk has accused Greg Wallace of making sexualised jokes during her time on Celebrity MasterChef in 2011. The former Newsnight host is one of 13 people to have reported inappropriate comments from Wallace over a 17-year period. Walk claims he shared stories and jokes of a sexual nature in front of contestants and crew, which she says she felt were really in the wrong place. Other allegations include Wallace openly discussing his sex life and making inappropriate comments to female colleagues. The 60-year-old's stepping down from the cooking show as the BBC investigates the historic allegations. And Sir Keir Starmer has spoken with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky as Russia intensifies its attacks on Ukraine's power grid. Zelensky described the assault as another act of Russian air terror, with over 90 missiles and nearly 100 drones targeting civilian infrastructure. The strikes, which left 1 million homes without power, is the second in less than 2 weeks, raising concerns over a winter of crippling energy shortages. In the call today, Zelensky also expressed his thanks for the UK's continued support, including £3 billion in aid. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, though, it's back to Tom and Miriam.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, I couldn't hand you back to Tom and Miriam without giving you a look at the markets this lunchtime. So the pound will buy you $1.2671 and €1.2015. The price of gold, £2,088.93 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,283 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A foggy and a frosty start, but most places having a fine day out there today, a little on the chilly side. It is going to turn milder as cloud increases in the west as this weather system starts to approach. We're between two lows, and this area of high pressure brought the clear skies overnight. That's why it was so frosty. Some thick fog still in a few spots this morning, but it is steadily clearing away. And here comes the cloud, just increasing across the southwest of England, southwest Wales and Northern Ireland. A little bit of showery rain coming in here as well, but most places dry with some hazy sunshine and light winds. Temperatures struggling though, starting off well below freezing, only getting to 5 or 6. Late in the day we should hit double figures further west. As we go through this evening, the fog could well thicken up once more, particularly across parts of central and eastern England. The cloud thick enough for the odd little bit of light rain and drizzle in the southwest, maybe Pembrokeshire too. The outbreaks of rain tending to clear away from Northern Ireland and push into western Scotland, so we will see a change here to wetter conditions as we go through the evening. The breeze all the while also picking up in many western areas, whereas light winds further east allowing it to turn pretty chilly pretty quickly again this evening. And there will be, as I say, a few thick fog patches, parts of East Anglia up towards Lincolnshire. So just be aware of that if you're heading out this evening. But they should actually tend to clear as the night goes on because the breeze picks up. The wet weather continues to affect northern Scotland, but otherwise it's a largely dry night. With more breeze, a bit more cloud, not as cold, not as frosty as this morning. Temperatures mostly holding up a touch above freezing. Still feeling pretty chilly tomorrow morning across these eastern areas at 1 or 2 degrees. But again, for many, it's a fine-looking day tomorrow. Dry, bright, hazy sunshine. We'll see the rain returning to Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. A few showers for Wales and southwest England late in the day. Still on the chilly side in the east, but generally it is getting milder towards the weekend.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon to you. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. To North Yorkshire and the southbound A1M, Thirsk down to Boroughbridge. That's junction 49 to 48 queuing. A collision means a lane closure in place. Now, if you're heading towards the northbound M6, there's long queues. 2 lanes out. Stafford North 14 up towards Stoke at 15. Debris on the road following an earlier vehicle fire causing big delays. The northbound M1, the entry slip coming on at Milton Keynes 14. Part blocked and slow, there's a broken down lorry there. The South Circular queue in London, the Chiswick High Road southbound, the A205. That's closed due to a car fire. It's shut from the M4 Junction 1, the Chiswick roundabout to Kew Bridge. Big queues on the approaches. Long queues westbound for the M27 in the roadworks around Hamble at 8, not helped there by a previous collision. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 20 to 2. And today, David Cameron has become the first former Prime Minister to actually back the assisted dying bill, arguing the bill isn't about ending life, but shortening death, insisting it won't put undue pressure on the NHS.
But this is a significant shift after he voted against the bill, a previous bill, in 2015. Well, joining us now, this is in advance of tomorrow. A Labour MP is going to be bringing in this private member's bill, Kim Leadbeater, putting the legislation forward to a vote in the Commons tomorrow.
Well, delighted to be joined by the former Number 10 Special Advisor and Advisor to the Ministry of Justice, Rajiv Singh. Rajiv, thanks for...
Rajiv Shah.
Shah, sorry. Goodness me. Thanks so much for being here in the studio. First of all, there's some new polling out today. It's covered in the Daily Mail, and it's quite at odds with other polling that we've seen on this issue.
Yeah, so the poll seems to show that after people have been presented with various facts about how assisted suicide has gone in other countries, such as how in Belgium and in the Netherlands, children are now being eligible and this widening of thing, plus presented with arguments against it, support for it drops to 11%, which is quite a dramatic shift.
What was quite astonishing, I think, about that poll was that 4 in 10 people, it said, didn't actually know what was being proposed. Indeed. And that many of them thought that assisted dying was basically just hospice care, so making life more comfortable in those final weeks. And they certainly didn't believe that it was the state giving you medication to kill yourself, essentially.
No, absolutely. I think what's quite striking about this is because it is a private member's bill and has been introduced in that way, there hasn't been a sort of long public debate about it. And actually, quite a lot of the public are not really informed about what the bill actually is, what it does, what it proposes. And so that's why I think polling in a bit more detailed manner, asking particular types of question, gets a bit closer to public attitudes than a general, what do you think of X question?
But can we call this poll an objective exercise in looking at what the legislation says? I mean, it was paid for by the campaign group Care Not Killing. They wrote the questions. The questions were saying, for example, in some countries have extended the law down to people below the age of 12. Would you support this in the UK? There's evidence from some other countries that people feel under pressure to put assisted dying because they feel they're a burden to their loved ones. I mean, there was a list of 10 campaign points from Care Not Killing. And then at the end of it, they found that 11% of people would still back assisted dying if they agreed even with, or cumulatively with every single 10 point. Is that the same as saying support drops to just 11% when you tell them what's in the bill? Because it looks like they've been fed a bunch of campaign points and then asked who still supports the bill after seeing one side of the argument?
I think some of those points were more arguments, which, has a degree of subjectivity to it, but I think some of them were just facts about, what's been happening in other countries and so on. But I think what it does show is that support is very, very soft. So you poll on the general question and then you find something like 2/3 of population's in favour, which, by the way, is lower than it used to be. Back in about 3-4 years ago, it used to be 80%. Now it's gone down to 2/3. When a similar sort of exercise actually was carried out in 2014, Care Killing did a similar sort of poll, which I think then found that support dropped to about 40-45%, maybe 50%. Now it's 11%. So, I mean, you're completely right. It's not a scientific exercise, but the general trend it shows
is... It's a useful exercise, because campaign groups do this all the time to see which of their arguments are the strongest, which influence behaviour the most. But, I mean, one of the questions that was asked of people in this was some people would be likely to request assisted dying because they can't afford social care. I mean, that
happens in other countries.
That's an argument that's made. I don't think that, particularly in the way this was written up in the Mail, you could argue that that's written in the bill, because it's not.
Well, but there's no safeguard against that. So there is a safeguard in the bill against pressure by another person. There isn't a safeguard against pressure by circumstances. So under the bill, if you say, I want an assisted suicide because I am unable to afford social care and spending all my inheritance on it, and all of that, the doctor and the judge have to approve it. They have no residual discretion to refuse that to you. So it does test the fact that there is an issue that people are concerned about, which the bill offers no protection against. And I think that is the key point.
And that was reflected in the poll, because I think 68% of people from memory said they didn't believe it was possible to create watertight safeguards. And then looking at the examples from other countries, Canada, the Netherlands particularly, where potentially these bills have started off fairly tight, supposedly 6 months to live, terminally ill adults, but have been extended and extended down to now children being able to request their own lives.
But even if they haven't been extended, so Oregon is an example where the actual text of the legislation hasn't changed that much. It's changed a bit. The waiting periods have been waived. The definition, though, in practice of what counts as terminal illness has been massively expanded and now includes anorexia or arthritis, things which we wouldn't consider are terminally ill. But so even though the text doesn't change, the practice can. So the slippery slope is real in various grounds.
Do you think it's impossible to have a form of words written in legislation that would contain assisted dying to simply what you and I would understand as a common or garden terminal illness in the last 6 months of life?
I think it's incredibly difficult to do, actually, because it's... the definition necessarily has to be subjective enough to accommodate new possible situations that arise. And then that openness is then liable to be exploited. So I think it's quite difficult. What you could do, though, is you could raise the evidential threshold on the 6 months prognosis. So currently it says reasonably expected, which case law has interpreted as meaning, would you be surprised if a patient died in 6 months? Which we know from studies is only about 50% accurate. You could raise it to reasonably certain, or as certain as science can be. I think the trouble with that, though, is that might make access too difficult for those who are in favour of the law. So, as I've written in an article on Con Home, I don't think there is a Goldilocks sort of legislation. If you tighten the safeguards, the people who are in favour of it thinks it will make access too hard. And if you don't tighten them, the people who have concerns think the safeguards will be inadequate. So there isn't... I don't think there is actually a sweet spot.
Would Australia be a model that might be sort of... I know that all of the people who campaign against this, say, point to Canada or look at the Netherlands. The people in favour of it say, well, look at Australia. What's the difference there?
So the Australian scheme is broadly similar to what's being proposed in this bill. There's a few differences. Australia, doctors are forbidden from suggesting assisted suicide to patients, whereas under the Leadbeater bill, doctors are allowed to do so. So, the claim that this bill is even tougher than Australia is not actually true. But there's a really interesting statistic I saw the other day. In Western Australia, they had, I think, about 600 cases that went to the first assessment stage, the first doctor. And not a single one of those was refused on the grounds of pressure or coercion. So which either tells you none of it is happening and it's all wonderful, or actually those safeguards do not actually pick up on possible pressures and coercion.
Well, Rajiv, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. But a big day tomorrow in the House of Commons, a conscience vote, of course. So MPs are allowed to vote how they believe is right, regardless of party whip. And we will, I'm sure, be covering that tomorrow.
Absolutely, big day. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come in today's programme.
Former Newsnight host Kirsty Wark is among 13 people accused of MasterChef presenter Greg Wallace making inappropriate sexual comments.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The BBC has been branded jaw-achingly stupid, not by me, by the way, over its decision to cast black and ethnic minority actors in the historical drama of Wharf Hall. Now, is this a forward-thinking idea or nonsense? Are we rewriting history? Henry, I mean, the Tudors were real-life people. They were pretty much white.
Well, some of these shows depart so much from historical context anyway that maybe it doesn't make any difference. But I think just generally we've got a problem in this country with portraying history in its correct sense. You can't change history. And I think it's about the motivation. If the motivation is to sort of to some sort of, you know, to make a political point, then I think it's wrong.
What I find kind of tedious about people finding this instant jaw-droppingly stupid, Jesus was portrayed by somebody who's half Slovak and half Irish. Moses was portrayed in the Exodus by an Englishman. So, you know, same with Anne Boleyn, you know, was portrayed by Natalie Portman, who is Jewish. So if this is the one thing that's getting people angry, then there's something deeper within that rage, because I think Hollywood's been doing that, where people...
When you say something deeper, do you think there is a hidden racism and people are complaining about this?
Well, I think for some, maybe yes. I can't speak for everybody because you know, this news dropped today. I don't know why they are thinking that it's egregious, but there absolutely must be some underlying racism if this is the only one that you're upset about.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes to 2, and lots of you have been getting in touch with us. Grumpy Grandad says, we need phones just for kids that can't access adult content or social media. I'm not for banning technology. We need to learn to live with it, but we have to do more to keep things safe for kids.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple of phones that are being developed like that.
Yeah.
But the problem is the network problems. You don't want your kid to be the one person in school with the phone that doesn't do anything.
No, but you're right. There are models being developed where you can get, obviously, the basic text function and call function, but also the things that really, really are useful. Maps, your train tickets, those kind of things. But you can't download the social media apps.
So
I think
it's not going back to the phone that I had at primary school that was... I had a very cool Motorola Razr.
Yeah.
It was, no,
so I think that is the answer, actually. Something that uses all the best advantages of a smartphone, but without the added danger of social media.
Well, Graham has been getting in touch, saying that regarding the ruling in Australia, it's a slippery slope to digital ID. Better education is needed for children. Digitally controlling who can access what's online is the thin edge of a terrible wedge. I suppose that is a big concern, that this is more government involvement in how companies can run their own social media companies.
I think the way to look at it is this is product regulation. and we say there are certain projects that children can't have access to. So obviously alcohol, tobacco, there's certain things they can't do, like driving. And so I think the simplest thing is, if, you know, the bulk of the evidence is now that social media is not safe for children, it wasn't designed for children, etc., etc. Just say you have to be 16 to go on social media. And after that, the government's not going to interfere with the content or say what's harmful or what's not harmful, because I agree, that is the thin end of the wedge.
Yeah.
But just there is an age at which you're not supposed to be on it, and that's it. And then you don't have to worry about
is that age 16? I mean, I think everyone can agree that a 12-year-old shouldn't be on social media. But I think I'm just thinking of, you know, when you have a class full of kids and half of them are born, you know, half of them are 16 and half of them are 15.
Yeah.
Are you going to get people born later in the year just being the bullied kids who can't access
that's a very good point.
the chat rooms?
And one proposal in the UK has been, you know, after you've done your GCSEs. You know, that's the cut-off. So for some people, they will still be 15. If you've got an August birthday like us, you'd still be 15.
This is really, you've picked up on this.
Exactly, this is what you're thinking about, isn't it? You can remember when you weren't allowed to drive and everybody else was. Yeah, I was there too. But in terms of digital ID, like, yes, we don't want ID cards. But on the other hand, if you want to open a bank account, you have to prove your age online. We know how to do that already. So it's not, you know, it's not a paradigm shift. We do have to prove ourselves online sometimes already, don't we?
Well, now Australia's jumped that policy. It will be a larger debate, no doubt, in the United Kingdom as well in the coming weeks and months. As if Keir Starmer doesn't have enough on his plate already.
This might make him popular, Tom.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come on the programme, including the news that the former Conservative Minister, Dame Andrea Jenkyns, has joined Nigel Farage in Reform UK. That to come after your weather forecast.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Getting a little milder over the next few days. Certainly tonight, not as frosty as last night. Still a few fog patches around. Didn't clear in some places under this area of high pressure. So it's across the eastern parts of England in particular. That's where we've got the lightest winds. That's where we're seeing that fog thickening up. Some not very pleasant conditions out on the roads here. But elsewhere, the cloud is increasing, the breeze is picking up, and it will be a wet night for parts of the north and west of Scotland, particularly over Skye. Very soggy indeed here, and that rain spreading across the Northern Isles too. Much of the mainland, though, dry and with a lot of cloud in the west, more breeze. A much milder night here. Still quite cold in eastern areas with light winds, but that fog should tend to clear away as we go through the early hours. And actually across much of eastern England, fine day to come on Friday. Going to be a bit of a wet start though across Orkney and Shetland. That rain should pull away to the north. Much of the mainland of Scotland starting dry, nowhere near as frosty as this morning, and we're well above freezing in Northern Ireland. Double digits to start the day on Friday here, and we'll have that contrast from east to west, whereas it'll still be cold in the east, much milder further west across England and Wales. As we go through the day, we'll see that cloud continuing to thicken in the west, so quite a grey day here with patches of rain coming into Northern Ireland, turning quite damp here by the afternoon, and more rain pushing back into the Western Isles of Scotland, so again very wet here. But even across western parts of the mainland, we'll see rain creeping in by the end of Friday. The west of Wales, southwest England seeing a few showers. It's a lot milder here, but it will be quite gusty, especially on the west coast of Scotland. Much of eastern England staying fine with hazy sunshine throughout the day. We will see a bit more of that rain just creeping inland as we go through Friday evening, so a few showers cropping up over northern England and into the Midlands. And we'll see a bit of patchy rain this weekend, but a lot of dry weather, mostly cloudy and breezy, but it will be a lot milder.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box Harrods 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 28th of November. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Miriam Cates. Well, immigration statistics have been revised upwards for last year yet again, with net migration for 2023 now standing at nearly 1 million people, an increase that puts this year's 20% drop in perspective.
Former Conservative Minister Dame Andrea Jenkyns says the British public feel betrayed. She's joined Reform UK as their 100,000th member.
To the people of Greater Lincolnshire, in me you have someone who will fight for you. I always do what is right and I always take the common sense approach.
TV's Greg Wallace steps away from the BBC show MasterChef. It's been reported that former Newsnight host Kirsty Walk is among 13 people who have accused the presenter of making inappropriate sexual comments.
And animal rights activists are up in arms as they demand the Sly Old Fox pub change its name because it's offensive to foxes. Well, they say it's contributed to the violent persecution of the animal. We're live outside the pub. I don't think sly is an insult.
Not to foxes, certainly.
If you say someone's a sly, wily, I mean, you're saying they're high IQ.
Exactly. It's kind of a compliment.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is utterly, utterly ridiculous, but you can only assume that it's a stunt by the charity to get more clicks and therefore more donations for their supposedly genuine causes.
My favourite, so this is a campaign group, PETA, if you're American, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. My favourite poster they've ever done is sort of this line of animals, right? You've got a cow on one end and sort of a pet hamster and then a pet dog, and then it goes to pig and all the rest of it. And the headline is, "Where do you draw the line?" Well, some bright spark with some spray paint, some graffiti paint, just drew it between the dog and the pig, and like, here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might be cultural, but it's absolutely agreed upon, isn't it? Very strange. Anyway, let's see if we get a Fox protest outside the pub.
Well, do you think we're being deeply insensitive here? If you do, or indeed if you agree wholeheartedly...
More insensitive than normal, he means.
Yeah, right. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved in the great Wiley Fox debate and indeed everything else we're talking about this afternoon. That's all to come, of course, after your latest headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 2, and the top story this afternoon. Net migration to the UK hit a record 906,000 people in 2023. That is 166,000 higher than first thought. The latest ONS figures show the number has, though, since dropped by 20%, now standing at 728,000 in the year to June 2024. Meanwhile, though, the cost of the asylum system has soared to more than £5 billion, nearly 12 times the amount spent a decade ago. The new Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has admitted her party got it wrong, she says, on migration, while Labour's migration minister claims it was the Conservatives who lost control of the system.
What we've seen is that in the space of 4 years, net migration quadrupled to almost 1 million. We absolutely believe that net migration has to come down. But in order to do that, we need to go further. That's why we believe that you need to tackle the causes of net migration, including linking skills and visa policies. You're addressing those gaps in skills and reducing the reliance on overseas recruitment.
A British soldier turned spy for Iran has been found guilty of breaching the Official Secrets and Terrorism Acts. Daniel Khalife passed sensitive military information to Iranian agents and offered to stay undercover for them for over 25 years. Prosecutors say the 23-year-old collected a very large body of classified data, risking, they say, soldiers' lives while being paid in cash. Khalife escaped from Wandsworth prison in September but was recaptured after 3 days on the run. He'll be sentenced next year. Reform UK says its membership has soared to over 100,000 people, up from just 15,000 last year. The party's leader, Nigel Farage, slammed the Tories and Labour over what he called horrendous net migration figures, despite a 20% drop in the last year. And in a major coup for the party, former Conservative Minister Dame Andrea Jenkyns has joined and will stand as Reform's candidate for Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire. Kirsty Walk has accused Greg Wallace of making sexualised jokes during her time on the BBC's Celebrity MasterChef in 2011. The former Newsnight host is one of 13 people to have now reported inappropriate comments from Wallace over a 17-year period. Walk claims that he shared stories and jokes of a sexual nature in front of contestants and crew, which she felt were really in the wrong place, she said. Other allegations include Wallace openly discussing his sex life and making inappropriate comments to female colleagues. The 60-year-old's since stepped down from the cooking show as the BBC investigates the allegations. One of Britain's largest unions has launched legal action against the government over means testing of winter fuel payments. The move, which Unite claims was rushed and broke legal rules, will see 10 million pensioners miss out on the benefit. The General Secretary, Sharon Graham, says it's a cruel cut and warned it will hit pensioners hard as temperatures drop this winter. Unite is pushing for an urgent High Court hearing to overturn that decision. The government, though, says that over 1 million pensioners will still receive the payment and urged others to quickly check if they qualify for pension credit. Sir Keir Starmer has spoken with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky as Russia is intensifying its attacks on Ukraine's power grid. President Zelensky described the assault as another act of Russian terror, with over 90 missiles and nearly 100 drones targeting civilian infrastructure. The strikes, which left 1 million homes without power, was the second in less than 2 weeks, raising concerns over a winter of crippling energy shortages. In the call, Zelensky also expressed his thanks for the UK's continued support, including £3 billion in aid. Here at home, 5 people are in hospital after a fire ripped through a takeaway and flats in North London. Around 100 firefighters were called to the blaze in Holloway just before 4 o'clock this morning. That fire tore through the restaurant and 2 flats, with crews battling thick smoke and urging locals to keep their windows shut. Roads were closed this morning with major congestion during rush hour, though the cause of the fire hasn't yet been confirmed. Researchers have described the first new treatment for asthma attacks in 50 years as a game changer. The injection dampens the part of the immune system that can be triggered in a flare-up of both serious asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. The trial, led by King's College London, found the injections more effective than steroid tablets by reducing treatment failure by 4 times. Steroids, the standard treatment, can cause severe side effects like diabetes and osteoporosis, making the injection a safer alternative. Researchers say it could soon be used not just in hospitals, but even at home. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have paid tribute to teenager Liz Hatton, who sadly died on Wednesday after battling a rare form of cancer. In a tweet today, the couple said, "We are so sorry to hear that Liz Hatton has sadly passed away," adding, "It was an honour to have met such a brave and a humble young woman." They signed off the post saying their thoughts and prayers are with Liz's parents and her brother at this unimaginably difficult time. Well, last month, the 17-year-old was pictured hugging the Princess of Wales at Windsor Castle after being invited to take pictures there. Those are the latest headlines for now. Another update in around half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 2. Now, a former British soldier has been found guilty of spying for Iran.
Yes, 23-year-old Daniel Khalife was accused of collecting secret information and passing it to agents of the Middle Eastern country. During a trial that lasted almost 4 months, Khalife denied ever having sent the list to Iranians and claimed that mostly he sent useless or made-up documents.
Well, he pleaded guilty to escaping from Wandsworth Prison in southwest London by clinging to the underside of a food delivery lorry. He's been cleared of carrying out a bomb hoax, but our very own Charlie Peters has the background to this case.
Checking the corners, preparing to escape. This is Daniel Khalife, inside Wandsworth Prison, about to launch his audacious breakout. Clinging to a rope sling under a food delivery lorry, he passed through the prison gates undetected. While on the run, he stole a cap from a Mountain Warehouse store. He went into M&S to buy clothes, and then got changed in McDonald's and bought a coffee. He even picked up a newspaper with his face on the front page. Arrested on a West London canal towpath, he said he was not running from his charges, but that he wanted to be moved away from a prison wing filled with sex offenders. Khalife's diary revealed that he had planned another escape attempt in August. He said in the hope he would be moved to the high security unit, but opted to escape for real when his botched attempt did not change his circumstances. He was in prison on remand for spying charges, with prosecutors alleging that the British Army soldier had collected sensitive military information for Iran. His escape sparked a countrywide manhunt, with lengthy delays at Dover amid enhanced security checks. During his trial, Khalife denied supplying information to Iranian agents. The court heard clips of Khalife sending voice notes to his Tehran handlers.
I just started a new chat, but the messages are still not going through. Yeah, okay, just delete the last one.
The police found completely fake documents, said to be from MPs and senior military officials and the security services, in his room. Images on Khalife's phone, which the prosecution said could be of use to a foreign state, were screenshots taken from the Army's intranet service. But jurors heard they were sent to him on WhatsApp by his captain as part of routine orders. As a soldier in the Royal Signals, Khalife boasted of having access to sensitive details of Special Forces personnel. Khalife told jurors that he had contacted Iran for a double agent plot, that he was a patriot, and that he wanted to prove himself. He said he wanted to expose Iranian intelligence officers working inside Britain. But regardless of his motive, the Daniel Khalife saga and his daring escape have troubling implications for Britain's security. Charlie Peters, GB News, Wandsworth.
Khalife, bad guy, but impressive escape. I mean, I can't help but have a bit of respect for the guy. I mean,
Not sure you should say that, but like you
It's what
said,
everyone's thinking.
like you said, Tom, it would be an interesting movie, and also the way it's written up,
Yeah.
it could sound like he's naive, or it could be a lot more sinister than that. It's very difficult to tell. But as you say, a very fascinating story.
I just wish he was in for like tax fraud instead of spying for Iran, and then I could actually sort of think, oh, give the guy a break.
We don't need a conversation about the moral stance of tax fraud. Anyway,
Well, I just think it's not moral. It's immoral. It's bad, and no one should do it. But it's better than spying for Iran. I'm putting my foot in a lot of buckets today.
I will agree with you on that.
Shall we move on to immigration
Let's do
statistics?
that.
Yes, they've been revised upwards for last year yet again. Net migration for 2023 now stands at nearly 1 million people. That's far higher, of course, than the previous 750,000 estimate.
Well, Labour has branded the previous government as an open border party who lied to the public. And joining us now here in the studio is our GB News Home and Security editor, Mark White. Now, Mark, although these statistics are extraordinary, there is reason to believe that they will be on the way down next year, the year after.
Yes, I mean, let's talk on the extraordinary first of all, and that revision upwards is very significant indeed and quite troubling that it is such a differentiation between the figure of 740,000 that we were given last year and now 906,000 that it has been revised up to. That's 166,000 in terms of an undercount. And that can be accounted for, we're told, by 82,000 people who came to the country that either they weren't expecting or hadn't properly estimated and calculated for, the 84,000 who left the country. But either way, it's very significant. And actually, if you take that miscalculation in terms of their projections out of the equation, then it wouldn't show that there had been any kind of progress made at all. Conveniently, of course, for Labour, it does show that there has been now a 20% cut that they can talk about. But of course, that 20% cut, to answer your previous question, perhaps is the changes that the Conservative government beforehand introduced starting to bear fruit. So, for instance, with regard to work visas, 241,000 work visas were granted in the year to June. That is down 28% on the same period last year. And some of that could be the result of changes that have come through to the salary threshold for certain jobs to qualify for visas to come across as well, and also issues around dependents coming over for certain jobs in the care sector, for instance. Dependents are no longer, in the vast majority of cases, allowed to come over, so that may have led to some of this reduction that we're starting to see for. And I should say as well, these are Home Office figures, just to confuse people more. The previous figures were Office for National Statistics figures, but the Home Office also put figures out on today, on the very same day, but their figures are for a different period. They take us right up to September of this year. Also worth talking about student visas as well, because that was part of the changes introduced under the previous government to try to cut down on the way in which many students were taking significant numbers of dependents with them over to the UK. Now, the student visa issue for the year to September was 392,000, almost 393,000, which is down 19%. But then the number of visas granted to dependents, that fell by 69%, down to 46,961. I'm having to remind myself of the numbers because there's just so many.
No, 69% is a big drop in numbers, but clearly still a very, very high in historical terms.
Absolutely, and both the Conservatives and the current government say that the immigration levels, net migration levels into the country are unacceptably high with regard to student visa numbers and the like. They want to get them down and under control. The Conservatives seemed, if I was hearing Kemi Badenoch and interpreting her correctly, when she gave her news conference yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, I think she was talking about the potential for going back down to the tens of thousands again. Well, David Cameron made that promise, didn't he?
Yeah.
And it was a complete hostage to fortune.
Well, Mark White, thank you. We also have another guest with us here in the studio, Dr. Mike Jones from Immigration Watch. Now, what's really interesting in these statistics is the number of people who've come to this country not to work, but as dependents of people who are working or as dependents of students. How many people do we think actually did come to work last year?
Well, if you look at the net migration figures for the past 3 years, you'll find there's about 3.1 million visas handed out. Only about 500,000 of those have actually been...
500,000, so a sixth.
Yeah.
1 in 6.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you've got to realise that mass immigration isn't just a function of labour markets and the desire for cheap labour. It's also related to humanitarian visas. You know, Global Britain was a big idea for the Tories. It's related to family visas, dependents, and obviously the higher education sector.
But we divide all of these visas up as people come in. And I suppose mentally we all think, oh, if someone's coming on a care visa, they must be a carer. Or if they're coming on a student visa, they must be a student. But I think there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that they might be for a few months, but then suddenly someone who was previously a student will drop out of university and join the labour force. Someone who was a carer might switch to doing a different sort of job. And before you know it, you've got hundreds of thousands of Deliveroo drivers and not much else.
Sure. I mean, fraud is baked into the cake if you have a mass immigration system. The only realistic solution to it is to impose a cap on numbers. So you'd have a net migration target. I personally believe in net zero, and then you'd impose caps on various visas. Most of them would have to be bureaucratically rationed, but, you know, private sector, you could auction...
Hang on, this net zero migration thing, are we really going to erect some sort of Berlin-style wall around the UK and say, oh, you can't leave the country until someone comes in, because we've got to have this net zero number? I mean, that's silly.
Not really. I mean, it's a target. You can't control emigration.
Yeah.
But net zero isn't net gross migration. It's where inflow is brought roughly in line with outflow. We had this in the 1980s.
So, for example, if people are coming over on genuine student visas, you'd expect them to stay for 3 years and then another student comes to take their place, etc. The counter-argument to that would be that we have a declining birth rate, we don't have enough young people born in Britain coming into the workplace when they're 18 or 21 to replace those who are retiring. So some people would say, we need this migration, otherwise our labour force will just be too tight. What would you say to that?
The problem with that is biology. Migrants grow old too. So in the long term, you're not really making a difference to the dependency ratio. There are also ways of adapting to an ageing society through the tax system, new technology, higher productivity. I mean, Japan has issues, but has adapted reasonably well.
Yeah, I mean, Japan has had huge issues with economic growth, dynamism, and I think quite a bit of emigration as well. I suppose the risk here is that when we had net zero migration in the 70s, 80s, I think in some years we had negative net migration. That was the correlation of that was with an economy that was known as the sick man of Europe. I suppose the silver lining of having millions of people who want to come to the UK is because the economy of the UK is more healthy than it was 50 years ago. There are more jobs than there were 50 years ago. How do we best balance those two competing issues?
I wouldn't describe it as a silver lining because there's always a danger of killing the goose that lays the golden egg. So if you want high productivity, you need an economy with high human capital, intelligence, skills and high levels of trust. The only way to enforce that system is through elite levels of migration. You need a cap and you need thresholds that are appropriate for that.
There's often stories in the papers about how British people won't do low-paid work anymore, whether that's, warehouse work, care work. Do you think that's true? Do you think if we did have a cap or even a net zero migration, do you think British people would do those jobs? Would wages rise? How would we get around this low-skill work problem?
That's a good question, but it's completely bogus, the argument, because if you import, say, 500,000 migrants to fill 500,000 vacancies, you're going to create as many vacancies again, because immigrants don't just produce goods and services, they consume them as well, and you need people to produce those extra goods and services. Economists have a word for this, they call it the lump of labour fallacy. The only way to solve vacancies in the economy is to allow the market wage mechanism to rise and also to allow institutions to upskill and reskill the population.
Well, Dr. Mike Jones, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And I do just want to say, the ONS is really terrible here. I mean, to undercount 82,000 in, overcount 84,000 out. The ONS headquarters were moved from London to Newport in Wales by Tony Blair. And I think I'm right in saying that 9 in 10 of the top statisticians stayed in London. And perhaps the quality of the organisation has...
big gaps in ONS data in terms of looking at contribution from people from different parts of the world and things like that. Anyway, I'm sure we'll be covering that again. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up in today's show.
Yes, indeed. We're live in Rotherham as the National Crime Agency conducts additional inquiries into missing files related to a trafficking investigation, all to do with this wider grooming scandal. More details after this.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As Strictly Come Dancing approaches its iconic Blackpool episode, marking halfway through the competition, visually impaired dancers across the country have spoken out about how groundbreaking the casting of Chris McCausland is, who suffers from, if I hope I'm saying this correctly, retinitis pigmentosa, and they have found him particularly inspiring. We've been talking, Sean, about how the casting of Strictly has been inspiring to so many people, but I imagine there'll be lots of people who are watching this at home finding your story of resilience really inspiring, because you've obviously really been through it. Is dancing something that has sort of, helped keep you going through all of those troubles? And what does it mean to you to see casting like this on a show like Strictly Come Dancing?
Like I say, all the things I went through. So those 9 years when I wasn't dancing, I was still dancing in my head and just banging on to other people. Very much not just people with sight loss. I've been a big advocate for people with social isolation. So many people on their own now, social anxiety, especially since COVID. And I just want people to get out. The stuff that I'm doing and all the stuff Chris is obviously doing, it will inspire others. Again, like I say, just not people just with sight loss. I had so many people come up to me in the early days, guys, and now that say, you know what, Shawnee, I've seen you do it, so I'm just going to do it. But you just got to get over yourself, because if you bother to do the maths, because all it is maths and walking. That's all it is.
Maths and walking actually sounds quite difficult.
Sean, thank you.
Oh, come on, mate. Can you shout? Can you walk? Crack on.
Sean, you're an inspiration. Thank you, mate, for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. You're a star, and so glad.
Just before I go, I'm just going to say this is Kev. Here's Kev.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 2, and the National Crime Agency is conducting additional inquiries into missing files relating to a trafficking investigation in Rotherham, after GB News brought new details to light last month.
Well, our national reporter, Charlie Peters, is in Rotherham with the very latest for us. Charlie, update us.
2 decades ago, a girl called Elizabeth was trafficked from this town in South Yorkshire to Bristol by gangs who were abusing her. She was used as part of a drug deal between rival grooming gangs in this country. She was part of the national grooming gangs scandal. Last month, I spoke to her to get her full story.
Trafficked from Rotherham down to Bristol by 2 Pakistani males. The thing is with CSA, it's like a game of lottery. People get your number and they just pass numbers around. They just appeared one day. It was already out of control, but that's when it becomes slightly, it was up in the game a little bit, yeah. They were trying to give us ecstasy and drinking. I knew quickly that there was something not right with their behaviours and things like that. When we got into Bristol, I can always remember, I've got distorted memories of it, but I can always remember like entering Bristol, but there was like a wall with water coming down. I'll always remember that. And then when we got to the car auction place, told us to get out and just left us.
Well, let's pick up the story from what happened 20 years ago. She was abandoned in Bristol by her abusers, but a worker from the supported accommodation she was living in here in Rotherham supported her, got her on a train and got her back to South Yorkshire. She then returned to that supported accommodation facility in this town. It was called Rush House, and I'm told by multiple people who worked there at the time and Elizabeth herself that they recorded all of the information about her trafficking ordeal. Nicknames, real names, number plates, what happened, the works. All that information, that vital intelligence was recorded. But as you and our audience know, Tom and Miriam, there was a failure by the police to act at the time. They did not deal with the child sexual exploitation scandal affecting Rotherham and so many of its children, thousands in fact. Well, 10 years on, after the release of the J report, police action started finally to occur. The National Crime Agency took up Elizabeth's case. But when they went to try and retrieve the file about that trafficking ordeal, it was missing. Elizabeth herself tried to get that file and found that while there was some limited information about her administrative experiences in Rush House, they did not have the full file on her trafficking ordeal. Now, as a consequence, and through the National Crime Agency's investigation, 2 men were eventually charged over that trafficking incident from this city down to Bristol. However, the trial collapsed and it never went any further due to a lack of evidence. That file would have been absolutely crucial for achieving justice for Elizabeth. Well, last month, GB News revealed that some whistleblowers from Rush House had gone to the council to share concerns about files going missing, about files being handed over to council facilities at a time when the local authorities and the police were failing survivors. We have seen an email which we exclusively revealed last month that shows that a senior representative from Rotherham Council promised an external investigation into trying to locate that file being moved. We're told it never happened. Rotherham Council say they're unable to access old emails for staff who have left working for the council. So yesterday, we had an update from the National Crime Agency. After we revealed those fresh concerns from that whistleblower, they told us that they were conducting additional inquiries into this trafficking incident. As we understand it, a senior investigating officer reviewed all of the original inquiries that took place, and now new lines of inquiry on this decades-old trafficking scandal will now take place.
Well, such an important update. Charlie Peters, thank you very much for bringing it to us. Astonishing that just 1 man has been convicted for the abuse, the grooming gang abuse of Elizabeth. Gang implies that there was more than 1 man doing it.
Yes, a tragic case. Well, you're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, and Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, will be giving a press conference on immigration at 3 p.m. this afternoon, and you can watch it here live on GB News. But before that, your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. 32 minutes past 2. The top story today: asylum spending has soared to £5.38 billion in 2023. That's a 36% increase and the highest since records began, nearly 12 times the amount spent just a decade ago. It comes as figures out earlier revealed that net migration, the difference between the number of people arriving in the UK and leaving, has fallen to 728,000 in the year to June 2024. That's also a fall of 20% from its record in 2023 of 906,000. Former British soldier Daniel Khalife has been found guilty of spying for Iran. Prosecutors say he collected secret and sensitive information on UK special forces and contacted Iranian intelligence soon after joining the army. After 23 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Khalife of breaching the Official Secrets Act and the Terrorism Act, but the 23-year-old was cleared of a bomb hoax at his barracks. Khalife escaped Wandsworth Prison last year, hiding under a food lorry, but was later caught and admitted to breaking out. He claimed he wanted to be a double agent, but his lawyers dismissed it as more Scooby-Doo than 007. Kirsty Walk has accused Greg Wallace of making sexualised jokes during her time on the BBC's Celebrity MasterChef in 2011. The former Newsnight host is one of 13 people to have now reported inappropriate comments from Wallace over a 17-year period. Walk claims he shared stories and jokes of a sexual nature in front of contestants and crew members, which she says she felt were really in the wrong place. Other allegations include Wallace openly discussing his sex life and making inappropriate comments to female colleagues. The 60-year-old's stepping down from the cooking show as the BBC investigates those historic allegations. Just a quick piece of breaking news for you. We've heard this afternoon that 2 police officers have been served misconduct notices after a 17-year-old girl sadly died fleeing a patrol car while in custody on the M5 motorway. Tamsin Hall, who was autistic, escaped that vehicle near Bridgewater on the 11th of November, crossing into oncoming traffic. The Independent Office for Police Conduct say they are now investigating how she managed to escape that vehicle and leave while in custody. And a full inquest, potentially with a jury, is scheduled, we understand, for next November. And Sir Ed Davies swapping Parliament for pop charts, hoping for Christmas #1 this year with a song called Love Is Enough. Take a listen to the charity single. Well, that festive track has been recorded with a full orchestra and 20 singers and was inspired by the Lib Dem leader's own experience as a teenage carer. Davies says the single highlights the love and resilience of carers and that he hopes it will strike a chord with families this festive season. That's it from me for this afternoon. Sophia Wensler will have your next full update at 3 o'clock. Now, though, it's back to Tom and Miriam.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A foggy and a frosty start, but most places having a fine day out there today, a little on the chilly side. It is going to turn milder as cloud increases in the west as this weather system starts to approach. We're between 2 lows, and this area of high pressure brought the clear skies overnight. That's why it was so frosty. Some thick fog still in a few spots this morning, but it is steadily clearing away. And here comes the cloud, just increasing across the southwest of England, southwest Wales and Northern Ireland. A little bit of showery rain coming in here as well, but most places dry with some hazy sunshine. and light winds. Temperatures struggling though, starting off well below freezing, only getting to 5 or 6. Late in the day we should hit double figures further west. As we go through this evening, the fog could well thicken up once more, particularly across parts of central and eastern England. The cloud thick enough for the odd little bit of light rain and drizzle in the southwest, maybe Pembrokeshire too. The outbreaks of rain tending to clear away from Northern Ireland and push into western Scotland, so we will see a change here to wetter conditions as we go through the evening. The breeze all the while also picking up in many western areas, whereas light winds further east allowing it to turn pretty chilly pretty quickly again this evening. And there will be, as I say, a few thick fog patches, parts of East Anglia up towards Lincolnshire. So just be aware of that if you're heading out this evening. But they should actually tend to clear as the night goes on because the breeze picks up. The wet weather continues to affect northern Scotland, but otherwise it's a largely dry night. With more breeze, a bit more cloud, not as cold, not as frosty as this morning. Temperatures mostly holding up a touch above freezing. Still feeling pretty chilly tomorrow morning across these eastern areas at 1 or 2 degrees. But again, for many, it's a fine-looking day tomorrow. Dry, bright, hazy sunshine. We'll see the rain returning to Northern Ireland and western Scotland. A few showers for Wales and southwest England late in the day. Still on the chilly side in the east, but generally it is getting milder towards the weekend.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. The eastbound M62 still seeing residual delays just towards Eccles at junction 12 following an earlier collision there. Now 2 lanes still coned off on the southbound M6. Spaghetti down towards the M42, junction 6 down towards 4A. There's a collision causing queues. A lane shut for a bump on the eastbound A50 Swaddling-Coat at 3 through towards Derby at junction 2. Queues there. Again, it's due to a collision. There's one as well on the northbound M1, so Derby 23A up toward Nottingham South at 24 queuing with a lane closure in place. The Chiswick High Road in London, the 205, the South Circular southbound, remains shut from the M4 junction 1 to Kew Bridge and queuing, and that's for an earlier car fire. And delays are up to an hour and a half on flights at Belfast City Airport this afternoon as well.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 39 minutes past 2, and of course, you know there's plenty more to come up on today's programme. But at 3 o'clock, it's not only the Prime Minister, it's our Prime Minister, it's Martin Daubney. Martin, what's coming up on the show? A big kick-off at 3 o'clock.
Well, I don't know what you've been drinking, but at the Christmas sherry earlier there, Tom. But yeah, 3 o'clock, all eyes on Downing Street. 1 million immigration last year. They found this mystery, 220,000 down the back of the sofa at Downing Street. What on earth is going on? 5.4 billion on asylum, a 36% increase. Will we ever take back control of our borders? And don't forget, Kemi Badenoch yesterday made the announcement of this record increase, knowing probably that it was even bigger. What does that mean for the Conservative Party? And, of course, it was meant to be reform's big day. Dame Andrea Jenkyns defecting sensation. But not all rosy for reform. Ben Habib sensationally quit the party. I've got Ben Habib on the show just after 4 to explain his rationale. Will there be other defections? And Miriam, will there be other defections to reform? There has been gossip in the past.
Oh, that's putting you on the spot, Miriam Case.
Well, I actually wrote a piece during the general election about why I wasn't going to join Reform because I was so fed up of being asked. But anyway, there you go.
Oh, very good. Well, Martin, we look forward to what will be a gangbusters show. Yeah, sorry, I thought you were about to say something. We've got a bit of delay on the line. Martin, looking forward to you at 3, and of course, hearing from Keir Starmer as well on this migration.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, what can he say? I mean, he can welcome the 20% drop, which of course is the result of the previous government policies.
Yeah.
But even so, you know, if you saw that figure stand alone without knowing that it was a fall, you'd still be absolutely shocked at the number of people coming into the country.
I think because it's his first year in office, he's got the opportunity to sort of make hay out of this. With anything that goes wrong now, it's not Keir Starmer's fault in the mind of Keir Starmer. Of course, all the investment that he boasts about, you know, the tens of billions of investment that he announced at the investment summit that was organised by the previous government, of course, he claims credit for that, but he will also claim credit for the fall in migration. Anyway, what we're going to see actually is a bigger challenge for this government, not this year, but next year, because next year's migration figures will have been entirely within the control of this government. Will they still be in the region of 700,000, or will they be substantially lower?
The frustrating thing is that there are some relatively simple levers here that can be pulled. You stop almost all student visas, apart from maybe to the top universities, as you suggested earlier. You stop visas for low-paid work, just raise the salary threshold to quite a significant high level, and you crack down on dependent visas, except for people coming over for some of those, shortage, high-wage occupations. You could very easily then get it down to 100, 150,000. But the barriers to pulling those levers in the Home Office, the ECHR, the university lobby is enormous. It should be possible, but will there be the political capital? I don't know.
And also, I mean, if you've got 40,000 people coming across on small boats every year...
that adds to the...
Do you really want half of your entire migration to be people who aren't bringing skills, who don't speak the language? I mean...
Who aren't bringing passports, let's be honest.
Right, but your heart goes out to genuine refugees, but, I mean, they're not the most economically productive people that you could have if you want to be the grammar school of the world.
Well, as we have been discussing, Keir Starmer will be speaking at 3 o'clock about immigration, and you can watch it here live on GB News. But what is the Prime Minister likely to say? Let's pose that question to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, big news, news conference with the Prime Minister. What can he really say, though, about these figures, given that he is so new into office?
Well, absolutely. I think Keir Starmer feels he needs to hold some sort of press conference on these really shocking immigration figures. We heard from Kemi Badenoch yesterday. We obviously heard from Nigel Farage today. Kemi Badenoch laid out a vague sort of framework for what her plan is for immigration, including reviewing Britain's membership of the ECHR. Now, she didn't go as far as Robert Jenrick, who said that he would leave it if he was elected as Conservative leader. Then, obviously, we had Nigel Farage today. Unsurprisingly, Reform's policy on this is to get Britain out of the ECHR, get some numerical cap on immigration. Keir Starmer, during the election campaign, he quite deliberately kept his policy on immigration pretty vague. He talked about smashing the gangs. He talked about tackling the problem up source. I think we can expect to see a little bit more of that, and I think we can expect him to lay the blame for these very, very high immigration numbers at the door of the Conservatives. The issue for Labour is that Keir Starmer has essentially, he has ruled out the Rwanda plan that was in the final stages of planning by Rishi Sunak's government on the grounds that it wasn't practical, it didn't seem to be going anywhere. And to be fair, he had a point. That Rwanda plan was talked about for over 2 years and nothing was ever done about it. But is Labour prepared to have some sort of deterrent strategy for immigration? I think that is a really major question that people will be asking Keir Starmer. He hasn't ruled it out in the past, but he hasn't actually said that the Labour government will be prepared to do it. As far as I'm concerned, that's what we should all be looking out for during this press conference today.
Certainly something to watch. Olivia Utley, political correspondent. We will, of course, be back with you. Well, Martin will be, as the press conference goes on.
Well, you're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show, including animal rights activists up in arms over the name of a pub. We're outside that pub in the next few minutes.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living and, of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses while staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way, to keep your home warm?
Some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. Those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by one simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things. But, it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees, it's not warm for a house.
No, and it's twofold actually. It's that kind of relative temperature, but also it's the kind of drafts and things you have in your house. So it's the comfort factor. So what we have a lot of old properties in our country. You've got some 8 million hard-to-treat properties built before World War II that have got poor insulation, but also very, very drafty. So it's the temperature and it's the kind of the draftiness of them that kind of keeps us uncomfortable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 2:48, and the animal rights group People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals has been accused of undermining real issues after asking a pub to change its name, claiming the name is offensive to foxes.
Well, the animal rights group wrote to the owners of the Sly Old Fox pub in Birmingham, saying the name was derogatory. Instead, they asked them to consider swapping Sly with Clever. Well, joining us now from outside that pub is GB News reporter Will Hollis. Will, is this just a stunt?
Yes, well, the pub has been here since 1891, but the stir is only a few days old. The PETA, the animal rights charity, says that the word sly makes people think of foxes as cunning and deceitful and pests in a derogatory way. In a statement from the PETA's Vice President Elisa Allison, they suggest that maybe the name the Clever Old Fox will be more fitting. I've been speaking to people here in Birmingham who've been telling me what they think about the request to change the name.
I think, to be honest, if you were a fox and you were called a sly old fox, you'd probably think you were doing quite well.
Well, I have foxes in my garden occasionally, and I do think they're very clever. So I think clever's a good move, actually.
Well, I think foxes are very clever and not sly at all.
I don't think it's an insult to foxes. I'm fond of foxes, but I don't think that name does them any damage.
I think it's marvellous, and to be fair, I live by a field and I love foxes.
Keep it the Sly Fox. He's a clever thief.
I think it's a bit silly. You know, I think the world's gone mad, changing everything. I suppose it's what they call woke, isn't it, these days?
Yes, well, PETA has approached pubs in this way before, including the Old Bulldog in Stoke-on-Trent. While the pub itself hasn't made a statement to the media yet, when I went in a little bit earlier, they told me that the manager will be in a little later on.
Well, we'll look forward to that, keeping our eyes peeled, Will, no doubt, later on the channel. Thanks for joining us.
Well, joining us now is the Senior Campaigns Manager at PETA, Katie Werner. Katie, thanks very much for joining us. Hello, we've just been hearing different views from Birmingham on this proposed name change. Is this just a stunt to gain publicity for the charity, or do you seriously think the pub should change its name?
Well, this was a friendly suggestion to give the Sly Old Fox a more cheerful, more accurate name, but it's inspired by serious research indicating that using more positive and complimentary language towards animals does actually increase our emotional response to them. And given how maligned foxes are, you know, why wouldn't our institutions consider helping them with a simple rebrand? And the Clever Fox certainly offers a more accurate depiction of foxes, who are remarkably intelligent. They use tools, they have complex language, they have excellent memories. So yeah, why not rebrand and encourage more reverence for these much maligned animals? And I'm sure we can agree that's a good thing.
Katie, I've got to say you've perhaps accidentally, but you've been very, very offensive there to old people. Because you want to change the name from the sly old fox to the clever fox. You say the word sly is an insult. By implication, the word old is an insult. You want to get rid of it. You want to call it the clever fox. Why not the clever old fox? What's wrong with old people?
The clever old fox is also fine. But, you know, harmful language is part of the reason why people find it easier to mistreat some animals more than others. And of course, in the case of foxes, it's incredibly clear to see how labelling them as pests has resulted in them being hunted and killed in, you know, other horrible ways, shot and trapped.
Katie, I would totally agree if you were talking about, let's say, a rat or a wasp, which most people see absolutely in a negative light. And
Wasps are
personally, I
bad.
think for good reason. But, I mean, I think a lot of people think foxes are amazing. I mean, certainly when I was a child, on my own children, get very excited if you see a fox in their garden or see one when you're driving along the road at night. And I don't think people do think negatively about foxes.
Well, you know, they're chased through the countryside still by some people.
But that's not because people think they're bad. It's because people enjoy hunting.
Well, they're still trapped, they're still poisoned and shot and starved. In some countries, they're still farmed and skinned alive for their fur. So, you know, these animals need all the help they can get. And one way we can help them is by using language which is more complimentary towards them. And I would also say that bees and other animals also deserve our compassion as much as, you know, the dogs and cats.
But everybody loves lambs and we still eat them.
Pardon?
But everybody loves lambs and we still eat them. So I don't understand the connection. No, but what I'm saying is I don't understand the connection between thinking and speaking positively about an animal and not killing and eating it. I don't think there is that connection.
Well, you know, you're a journalist, you're a broadcaster, you understand that words have power. And we know, as I say, that this is backed up by science. You know, all animals deserve the same respect. We shouldn't be eating them. We shouldn't be chasing them across the countryside. And I think, you know, we can start, like I say, just by the way we describe them. And, you know, it's easy to use compassionate words for animals and describe them in a way that they deserve.
I don't know. I'm not sure all animals need the same. I think a dog needs more respect than a cockroach. But I mean, there's a hierarchy of sentience. But
no, that's speciesism. That's the way we, you know, that's the way.
I guess I'm a
think of them.
speciesist. Is that terribly? I'm going to get cancelled. Katie Werner, I'm sorry we've run to the end. We've run to the end of the show. But thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
Well, that is indeed the end of the programme. But do stay with us here live on GB News. The Prime Minister's immigration press conference will be next with Martin Daubney.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Getting a little milder over the next few days. Certainly tonight, not as frosty as last night. Still a few fog patches around. Didn't clear in some places under this area of high pressure. So it's across the eastern parts of England in particular. That's where we've got the lightest winds. That's where we're seeing that fog thickening up. Some not very pleasant conditions out on the roads here. But elsewhere, the cloud is increasing, the breeze is picking up, and it will be a wet night for parts of the north and west of Scotland, particularly over Skye. Very soggy indeed here, and that rain spreading across the Northern Isles too. Much of the mainland, though, dry and with a lot of cloud in the west, more breeze. A much milder night here. Still quite cold in eastern areas with light winds, but that fog should tend to clear away as we go through the early hours. And actually across much of eastern England, fine day to come on Friday. Going to be a bit of a wet start though across Orkney and Shetland. That rain should pull away to the north. Much of the mainland of Scotland starting dry, nowhere near as frosty as this morning, and we're well above freezing in Northern Ireland. Double digits to start the day on Friday here, and we'll have that contrast from east to west, whereas it'll still be cold in the east, much milder further west across England and Wales. As we go through the day, we'll see that cloud continuing to thicken in the west, so quite a grey day here with patches of rain coming into Northern Ireland, turning quite damp here by the afternoon, and more rain pushing back into the Western Isles of Scotland, so again very wet here. But even across western parts of the mainland, we'll see rain creeping in by the end of Friday. The west of Wales, southwest England seeing a few showers. It's a lot milder here, but it will be quite gusty, especially on the west coast of Scotland. Much of eastern England, staying fine with hazy sunshine throughout the day. We will see a bit more of that rain just creeping inland as we go through Friday evening, so a few showers cropping up over northern England and into the Midlands. And we'll see a bit of patchy rain this weekend, but a lot of dry weather, mostly cloudy and breezy, but it will be a lot milder.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m.